Chapter 1. Winter Spring. Under the huge magic dome, towering marble columns stand around it. One could vaguely see ant-like figures lined up neatly, and in the very center of the magic dome sat a huge magic crystal. Grulu, magic power 4212 points, 4th level wizard. Claire, magic power 5001 points, 5th level magician. Reg, magic power 4999 points, 4th level peak magician. The tester shouted. The young wizards who had just finished testing their magic power left the huge crystal with some rejoicing, some cheering, and some sighing. This is the Great Winter Spring Valley, the magical temple of the noblest guardian organization in the Violet Continent. At this time of year every year, the young mages in Winter Spring would come to this temple and have their magic energy tested. Any mage who has been in Winter Spring for 3 years must undergo testing. Those boys and girls who cannot break through a certain level within 3 years must leave Winter Spring and lose the opportunity to further their studies in Winter Spring. Therefore, this annual inspection has become a matter of concern for many young mages. Why? On the high platform under the magic dome, Nanako, who had 2 long ponytails, sighed, her cheeks puffed up, and her eyes were filled with sorrow. She wore a big wizard's hat on her head. Although she was petite, no one dared to look down on her. Because she is one of the 7 deacons of Winter Spring. The 7 deacons represent the highest power and authority in Winter Spring. Even the weakest among them is a city-breaking wizard who can destroy an entire city by himself. Nanako is the 7th deacon of Winter Spring, the storm witch who represents frost and cold. But at this moment, she couldn't be happy at all. Lin En ubd. Nanako looked at a young man in the queue below with sorrow and frustration, and murmured, 3 years. Master has been teaching you for 3 whole years, why are you so disappointing? Given so many resources to you, even if it's just a pig, you can force out a 2nd level mage in 3 years. You can vaguely see it. Among the crowd, the young boy was wearing a linen robe and a large wizard hat, but it was still difficult to hide the handsomeness on his young face. But at this moment, his face was obviously sleepy, his eyes were hazy, and he seemed careless. His name is Lin En, and he is Nanako's apprentice. 3 years ago, Nanako brought him to Winter Spring and trained him carefully, wanting to turn him into a qualified and noble mage. She always has a very accurate eye for people. But this time, she failed miserably because of this young man. Over the past few years, she has invested countless efforts in Lin En, and based on the principle of not letting anyone fall behind, she has taught her step by step. But the progress of his magical abilities was so slow that it was outrageous. Usually it's something I just learned today. I will forget most of it tomorrow. If one can remember 1 layer the day after tomorrow, Nanako would exclaim that he is a genius. It is not easy to exclaim. Lady Nanako, are you worried that your little apprentice will be eliminated? A magician next to Nanako blinked and looked at the worried Nanako. Nanako blew her bangs helplessly and said listlessly, yeah, that guy Lin En, is simply the dumbest person I have ever seen. Even dumber than a rock. Looking at Nanako's frustrated expression, the magician whispered, Lady Nanako, there's something I want to say but I'm not sure if I should say it or not. Go ahead. Nanako said while blowing her bangs boredly. The magician frowned and said, actually, this is not a bad thing for Lin En. After all, it is recognized that his magical talent is low. He is not suitable for the path of a magician. Miss Nanako, you are so powerful, there is really no need to care about him. After all, with your status, there are many qualified mages in this world who are willing to be your students. Nanako stopped blowing her bangs. Time seemed to freeze for a few seconds. She stood up, pressed the big wizard hat on her head, revealing a pair of sapphire eyes. If I give up on my student just because he's stupid, that's not my style, Nanako. She tilted her head and stared at the magician with her big, chilling eyes. The magician immediately felt goosebumps all over his body and subconsciously lowered his head. Besides, her eyes seemed to speak. Even if you hold a stone in your arms for 3 years, you will develop feelings for it. Next. Accompanied by the inspector's loud shout. Lin En, with sleepy eyes, walked to the huge magic crystal. Anyone could see that his eyes were filled with solemnity and worry. Behind him, there were sounds of boys and girls laughing and talking. Look! Look! It's Lin En's turn to be tested. Don't you know? Lin En is the student of the 7th deacon, but I heard that his magical talent almost broke the record of the lowest in Winter Spring Valley for thousands of years. Really? But he's really handsome. Yes. Yes. But I suspect that the reason why Lady Nanako kept him is probably because he is so handsome. After all, if I had such a handsome apprentice, I would not be willing to throw him away. There was a lot of discussion behind him, but Lin En's heart was not here. He is very worried now. Unprecedented worry. So should I use 0.9 of 100 millionth of the magic power for testing, or should I use 1 of 100 millionth of the magic power for testing? Lin En muttered to himself, frowning. Because this is a century-long problem for someone who suffers from indecisiveness and obsessive-compulsive disorder. With 0.9 parts per 100 million of magic power, he would have just broken through to become a second-level wizard, and could then naturally stay in Winter Spring and survive for a few hundred years. But the magic power of 1 part per 100 million is just enough to make it perfect, which is very beautiful and simple, but when it is detected, it is obviously higher than the second order. This is absolutely a terrifying choice for people who have difficulty making decisions. Hey! Are you still going to get tested? The inspector frowned at the worried-looking boy in front of him and said, there are still a lot of people queuing behind. He had seen many young mages like this. Many young people who know that their magic power is not up to standard will be very worried and even sweat profusely when standing in front of this magic crystal. Failure to meet the requirements means leaving Winter Spring and saying goodbye to the path of a mage from now on. Lin En said worriedly, let me think about it. Sorry, this is a very important matter. And on the high platform. Seeing her apprentice standing in front of the testing crystal with such concern, Nanako felt a pain in her heart and a trace of pity flashed in her eyes. She also likes Lin En, her sensible apprentice, very much and doesn't want to be separated from him. But rules are rules. She took a deep breath, then floated down and walked towards Lin En. She wanted to comfort her apprentice and not let him have too much psychological burden. Hello, Miss Nanako. Nanako is a great adult. Seeing the petite loli striding towards them, the surrounding mages all saluted. But Nanako ignored them, her eyes were always on Lin En. She quickly walked to Lin En, then stood on tiptoe and patted Lin En's shoulder. Disciple. Nanako spoke in a clear and sweet voice, trying to make her tone gentle. Don't be afraid, it's just a magic test. Even if you don't meet the standard, you will always be Master's apprentice. Come on. Lin En said worriedly, no, Master, I'm not worried about that. Nanako asked in confusion, then what are you worried about? Lin En frowned and said, Master, I want to ask you a question. Do you prefer 1 or 0.9? I'm a little undecided. Chapter 2. Nanako was suddenly confused. So how does this relate specifically to you being away from Winter Spring soon? However, looking at her apprentice's serious expression, Nanako answered tentatively, 1. Lin En paused, then a look of relief appeared on his face, and he said sadly, thank you, Master. That's good. After all, if it is not your own choice, then you don't need to worry about making decisions. Looking at the obviously relieved smile on Lin En's face, Nanako tilted her head, looking confused. She simply couldn't understand what her disciple was saying. No matter what, Nanako said helplessly, take the test and accept the results calmly. Even if you leave Winter Spring, you will become a useful person. After saying that, Nanako sighed, turned around, brushed her robe, and was about to leave. She didn't really want to see her disciple's expression when she saw the test results, as that would make her feel even worse. But at this moment, a voice suddenly appeared in her mind. Since Master Loli said it is 1, then use 1/100 million of your magic power to deal with the test. Anyway, if I'm found to have hidden so much strength, I'm afraid I'll have to move to another place to hide, Nanako. Hear the voice that suddenly sounded in my mind. Nanako was stunned for a moment. He had been with his apprentice for 3 years, so how could he not recognize that the voice was that of his apprentice Lin En? But why did this voice sound directly in her mind? She turned her head immediately. He looked in astonishment at Lin En, who had already stepped onto the crystal table, placed his hand on the crystal and was conducting a test. Lin En closed her eyes, pressed her fingers on the cold crystal, and then mobilized her magic power. Prepare for the test, the tester shouted, relax your body, circulate your magic power with the crystal, and maintain it for 10 seconds. Following the tester's loud shout, Lin En held his breath and fell into meditation. Let me think, 1 part per 100 million of magic power. Wait, damn, I think I remembered it wrong. 1 in 100 million seems to be the data from a year ago, now it seems that 1 in 500 million is the second level. I forgot how strong I am. Damn, I almost exposed my strength. Just now, I accidentally stirred up a little bit of magic energy. My little lowly master wouldn't notice it, right? Lin En muttered to himself. But Nanako, who was not far away, instantly showed a look of shock. It was indeed the disciple's voice. But the disciple clearly didn't say anything, so why could I hear him? Is it the voice of the heart? What I just heard was what my disciple was thinking. As a powerful city-breaking wizard, Nanako figured out the current situation almost instantly. In other words, for some unknown reason, she was able to capture what her disciple was saying in his heart. Etc. Then what about the 100 millionth and 1/500 millionth magic power that he had just muttered in his mind? Hiding his strength. Disciple, is he hiding his strength? Nanako opened her eyes wide and pricked up her ears, listening carefully. Ah, it's so hard for me. I'm so strong, but I have to pretend to be an ordinary person and get along with you guys, but there is no other way. Soon, the gods will walk on earth again. If I reveal my strength, I might be treated as a leek and be harvested again. I'd better hide myself first. After I become a god, I'll go and settle accounts with those gods who killed me once. Well, it's safe. Nanako. What the hell? Hiding your strength? Hiding until the maximum level? Could it be that my disciple was so worried about leaving Winterspring that he became confused? Then she heard Lin En's voice again. Let's just say 1 in 500 million. I'll convert it, and the result should be 2321 magic points, no problem. And the next moment, this voice sounded in her mind. The tester shouted, Lin En, magic power 2321 points, second level magician. Passed. As soon as these words came out, Lin En smiled slightly. The young mages around all exclaimed. Especially the young girls, they were extremely shocked and full of surprise. Passed. Lin En actually passed. I met him during routine testing a month ago. At that time, his magic points were only over 1,200. Has it increased by 1,000 points in just 1 month? That means Lin En can stay in Winterspring from now on. Nanako was equally shocked. But what shocked her was not that her apprentice passed the test, but that he actually told her his test results exactly. 1 in 500 million, 2321 magic points. Is he crazy or am I crazy? No. No. Nanako covered her forehead and muttered to herself, I must have been too anxious in the past few days and had auditory hallucinations. After all, being able to suddenly hear my disciple's inner voice is obviously a very strange thing. While she was muttering to herself, Lin En had already walked over with ease. Lin En put one hand on his chest, performed a magician's etiquette, and said respectfully, Master. I have lived up to everyone's expectations and finally passed the test. I can continue to stay in Winterspring Valley to honor you. Forget about showing filial piety, it's still nice to look at the lowly master every day to refresh the eyes even though it jumps away when you poke it, and often falls over its own ponytail, it's still pretty cute. So, Master Lowly is hundreds of years old, how come he can always maintain this shape? Nanako. Regardless of whether this voice is true or false, the content here is really infuriating. Besides the name Lowly Master, I really don't want to hear that at all. Nanako turned her head angrily, and stared at Lin En with her sapphire eyes. It seems as if he wants to see all his secrets. Lin En was puzzled and asked in confusion, Master, what's wrong? Is there something on my face? There's something wrong with Master Lowly. Could it be that he sensed the magical power that I accidentally stirred just now? That shouldn't be the case. I erased it before it was released from the body. Master is so weak that he shouldn't be able to sense it. Maybe it's because I'm handsome, Nanako. That's right. It shouldn't be an auditory hallucination. In other words, the 150 billionth of magic power that the disciple had just said in his heart was all true. If 1 in 500 million of magic power is a second-level wizard, then how high his rank must be now? Assume. Assume first. If what I just heard is true. So what was his purpose in sneaking into Winterspring? With such a high rank, could he be a demon? The king of hell? Or the devil Lucifer? Disciple. Nanako asked doubtfully, are you hiding something from me? Lin En was startled, then he touched his chin and said with a smile, Master, what could I possibly be hiding from you? If you're talking about me sneaking into the kitchen 2 days ago, I swear I didn't go there to steal food. Master is very strange, is he really suspected? Impossible, I hid so well, there is no way the people in Winterspring could see through my strength. Even if my master is a Lolita who is hundreds of years old, she would not be able to find out. So I'm overthinking. Nanako. Chapter 3. A few hundred years old Loli. Nanako's eyebrows twitched, and her cheeks puffed up with anger. Her face turned red, and the white air coming out of her head pushed up her wizard's hat. She closed her eyes, the corners of her eyes twitching wildly. The little hands in the sleeves clenched tightly and trembled with anger. This abominable fellow actually addressed his beloved master in this way in his heart. You are the 100-year-old Lolita. Your whole family is 100-year-old Lolita. It's simply unforgivable. This abominable apprentice usually looks so honest, but I didn't expect that he has so many thoughts in his mind. And it also hides many unknown secrets. No. I must never let him know that I can hear his thoughts. We must investigate him thoroughly. She thought, gnashing her teeth in hatred. Disciple. Nanako stood on tiptoe and patted his shoulder, saying seriously, since you can stay in Winterspring now, go back and have a good rest. Don't leave your residence for the next few days. Master needs to go out for a while. Lin En heard this, his eyes were filled with longing, and he said worriedly, Master, how long will you be gone? 2 or 3 days. He looked high-spirited. Well, Master, I understand. After this test, I deeply feel my current weakness, so I hope that Master can come back soon to teach me new magic. I will wait for you at home. Lin En put his hands together, his expression serious and full of fighting spirit. Please. Nanako was a little touched and was about to speak. Then I heard Lin En's voice. Ha 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 ha. Has this little loli finally gotten wise? I've been waiting for this sentence for 3 years. I can finally have some fun. Will I go out? Are you kidding me? Is it normal to go out for a walk when you have nothing to do? Every day, I am forced by my little loli teacher to learn those kindergarten magic tricks. I am going to explode. Oh, oh haha, I feel relaxed. Nanako, gritting teeth, all right. I shouldn't waste my feelings. This damned dog. Molar. Wait for me to come back. She gritted her teeth in anger and said, go back and copy the basics of magic 50,000 times. I'll come back to check. Lin En. Homework is given during the holidays. Isn't this ridiculous? 50,000 times? Killing a pig? Who would give homework to a decent person? This 100-year-old loli has no moral principles. Damn it. When I reveal my true colors, I will definitely pin this evil loli master against the wall and spank her. 50,000 times. I'll keep my word. Spanking? Gamanji? Nanako trembled and subconsciously reached one hand behind her. After complaining in his heart, Lin En said with determination and seriousness, don't worry, Master. I will definitely complete the task you assigned to me. I promise. Nanako said dully, come on. A few minutes later. Nanako rode on a broom, in the howling wind, with the big wizard hat on her head, and quickly came to the magic library. He rushed in, then scanned the surroundings, searching for books on projection, possession, demons, etc. Finally, in a dusty corner deep in the library, she found a relevant book. Encyclopedia of Demonic Projections and Possessions. My disciple must be possessed by an evil spirit. Nanako had a serious expression on her face. She quickly opened the book, and her big eyes quickly read the magical words on it. If it's an evil spirit, there's a way to deal with it, but if it's a demon projection, then we're doomed. Although being able to hear the thoughts of his disciples is very strange. But what concerned her most was the information she heard in her heart. 1 in 500 million magic power is enough to create a second-level magician. I'm afraid only gods have such power. She flipped through it quickly, then recited several tests for detecting whether it was an evil spirit possession or a demonic projection. Demons and evil spirits are naturally restrained by the divine aura. In an environment with a strong divine power, they will inevitably reveal their true form. She muttered to herself and closed the book. And at the same time, Lin En returned to his residence with his hands behind his back comfortably. As the apprentice of Nanako, the 7th deacon of Winterspring Valley, he naturally has his own independent courtyard. However, because he had behaved so stupidly in the past 3 years, his angry lowly master deprived him of the right to live there. He was forcibly moved to Master Lowly's own magic tower. What Master Lowly meant was that this would make it easier to teach and supervise. So, they rented together. Although Lin En felt a little guilty about hiding his strength from his lowly master. But there is nothing we can do about it. If I don't survive until I reach the maximum level, Lin En stroked his chin and said, if I'm discovered by the gods now, I'll be dead, right? Lin En is not from this world. He is a time traveler. He vaguely remembered that he traveled to this world about 5,000 years ago. At that time, there was no winter-spring organization in the Violet Continent, and magic was still in its barbaric period, but he still managed to rise in that era and became one of the most powerful creatures on Earth at that time. If you read history, you will definitely be able to see the story about the 7 kings of Violet in ancient history. And he is one of them. But it was precisely because he was too high profile at that time that he was poisoned by the gods and took advantage of them. If he had not possessed some ultimate magical weapon that could enable him to achieve nirvana and rebirth, he would have been completely killed by the gods long ago. But the price of rebirth is lose all your powers and become an ordinary person. But Lin En is not worried. Ding! You breathed once, your magic value +1 ding. You yawned, your physical fitness +1 that's right. This was the key to his rise in the first generation. The evil ultimate salted fish system. In other words, as long as he is idle and does nothing, he can get system rewards. Although it is not much, but little by little it adds up to a lot. As long as there is enough time, you will become a god sooner or later. I accidentally fell because I was too anxious before. So this time he learned his lesson. He will never come out until he reaches the maximum level. Yes. No. Let's go back and take a nap first. Lin En yawned. The improvement from just one night's sleep is enough for others to train for several months. 2 days later, the sun began to turn pale in the east. Ding! You had a wet dream. You felt very comfortable. Magic value +1 ding. You comprehended the forbidden magic 9 heavens of ice and fire in your dream. Ding! You slept for more than 24 hours in a row, and you will be awarded 200 power points on the bed. Lin En was sleeping soundly. The bubbles on his nose expanded and contracted. At this time, a small white hand slowly reached out and popped the bubble on his nose with a finger. Lin En opened his eyes sleepily. Then he immediately saw a pair of ice blue eyes staring at his eyes, less than 5 centimeters away, and a scent of a lowly's body wafted towards him. FK. Master. You scared me to death. Lin En opened her eyes instantly, startled, and stared. Then, I saw a little girl wearing a magician's blue robe and 2 blue ponytails standing in front of the bed. Those ice blue eyes fluttered, looking so cute and adorable. Get up, the sun is about to burn your butt. Nanako tilted her head and said, are you happy to see Master back? Master is taking you to a place today, so get ready. Lin En exhaled, smiled, and said, yes, Master, I am very happy. Then where shall we go? To practice. I don't want to see you at all. I'm not happy at all. I don't want to go anywhere, it's only 12 o'clock in the morning, and I'm taking a nap. It's really annoying to be disturbed when I'm sleeping comfortably. Damn it. You damned century-old lowly. You've interrupted my salted fish life. Nanako's temple twitched slightly. A big appeared on his forehead. Chapter 4. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Clench your fists. Prevent yourself from beating this person up. Calling her 100-year-old Lolita. Nanako clenched her fists, gritted her teeth, and thought to herself, it really makes me angry no matter how many times I hear it. This abominable two-faced disciple must be severely taught a lesson when the opportunity arises. Half an hour later, deep in Winter Spring Valley. In a magnificent and huge palace, there is a sacred light everywhere. Walking inside, one can even hear the echoes coming from the empty hall. Nanako was walking in front with a book in her arms and her eyes closed. The 2 long ponytails swayed up and down, floating like smoke. Isn't this the sacred curtain? One of the most mysterious places in Winter Spring, only the 7 deacons can enter. What did Master Lowly bring me here for? Imprisonment play? This is not good. In such a sacred place. Nanako resisted the urge to hit him, the ahog on her head flapped the air angrily, but on the surface she still maintained a calm and dignified image. The purpose of bringing Lin En here was very simple. The Sacred Vale, one of the most mysterious places in Winterspring. Only the 7 deacons know that a creature from ancient times is sleeping underground in the Sacred Curtain Hall. It is the embodiment of the divine, representing all the light and purity in the world. And the place where it sleeps becomes the place with the most concentrated sacred energy in the world. And he brought Lin En here just to see if he was really the same as he suspected. She turned sideways and looked at Lin En out of the corner of her eyes. You didn't show any discomfort. It's not a possession by an evil spirit, nor is it a projection of a demon. Or maybe it's because its rank is too high and it has no effect yet. She thought to herself, and at the same time she was very nervous. In her heart, she actually didn't want the disciple who she had been with day and night for 3 years to be some kind of evil cult. Soon, they came to the central hall of the Sacred Curtain. The sacred energy here has almost condensed into substance. Various sacred light spots can be seen in the air, which is extremely dreamy. Master? Why did you bring me here? Lin En looked around and wondered, this isn't a place for an ordinary disciple like me to enter, right? What the hell is this long-haired lowly doing? Why are you acting a little jumpy lately? You look like you have a lot on your mind. Is it because of irregular menstruation? That's right, 100-year-old Lolita being out of tune should be a very normal thing, Nanako. This dog apprentice. I really want to hold him down and beat him up. You have irregular menstruation. Your whole family has irregular menstruation. I'm so angry. Nanako suppressed her inner urge and secretly observed the changes on Lin En's face, and asked, don't you have any special feelings? Lin En touched his chin and smiled, it's warm and comfortable. Why does this place look so familiar? Why do I feel like I have a mouth full of fur? It feels so familiar. Let me think about it, it seems to be that guy's aura. I remember the last time I saw it was 1,000 years ago, but something is wrong. That thing should have been harvested by the gods, but Nanako was shocked instantly. Seen it once 1,000 years ago? That guy? Who is he? Harvested by the gods? Nanako immediately felt that she might have been exposed to some terrifying information. Could it be that this disciple of mine has lived for more than 1,000 years? She forced herself to suppress the throbbing in her heart, and then said seriously, Disciple, Master brought you here to pray for the Holy Lord to bless you. In this way, even if your aptitude is not high, you can still gain a high affinity for sacred magic. This is one of the privileges of the 7 deacons, and also an agreement between Winterspring and that being. As one of the 7 deacons, she could only ask for the blessing of the Holy Lord once in her lifetime, and she made the decision after considering it for a long time. If there is really something evil in the disciple, the Holy Lord can help purify it. If not, my disciple has the blessing of the Divine Lord, which is definitely a good thing that ordinary people dream of. This was for Winterspring as much as it was for him. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Divine blessing. Lin En asked doubtfully, Master, are you having a fever? Is it really okay to waste this privilege on me? FK, is Master Lowly serious about this? But I have to say, I am really touched. Master Lowly is very kind to me, her disciple. Although my divine affinity has already been maxed out, a little more is always good. Isn't it possible that Master Lowly has fallen in love with me? It's possible. After all, I'm so handsome, Nanako. Damn it. Why does this dog apprentice have so many thoughts in his mind? Falling in love with you, being narcissistic, I really want to beat him up. She gritted her teeth. However, she was still puzzled to find that her disciple did not show any fear or discomfort in his heart. Could it be that she really guessed wrong? She frowned slightly, becoming more and more curious about the true identity of her disciple. Soon, she let out a frustrated sigh. Anyway, no matter what. As long as it's not an evil spirit or a demonic projection, then everything is fine. Stay here and wait for a moment. Master will go and pray for the Lord's blessing. Nanako puffed out her chest, walked to the center of the hall, and began to arrange the ceremony and carve the sacred magic circle. When Lin En saw the magic circle, his expression became more and more confused and weird. This sacrificial ritual looks so familiar, could it really be that guy? Then he saw it. Nanako crossed her hands, clasped them in front of her chest, closed her eyes and prayed. O Lord of the holy and pure, the supreme being of all things and all purity, by the contract of Winterspring, I, Nanako, pray for your awakening and for your divine blessing. A moment. The magic circle in front of Nanako suddenly lit up, and the several offerings she offered instantly turned into points of light and disappeared. In the dim light, the entire hall was swept by a sacred storm. The next moment, right in front of them, a huge ball of light that was too big to look directly at suddenly appeared. The sacred light is extremely dazzling. And vaguely one could see the silhouette of a tall beast with wings emerging from the light ball. Insignificant human. A voice without any emotion echoed throughout the hall. I have awakened in response to your contract. Tell me, for whom will you bestow your blessing? Nanako was kneeling there, trembling all over, and trying hard to stop herself from shaking. This is the Divine Lord. The ancient Holy Spirit sleeping beneath the sacred veil. This is the closest existence to God. She immediately bowed her head and said humbly and devoutly, Great Holy Lord, in the name of the 7 deacons, I ask you to bless my humble disciple, remove all diseases and evil spirits from him, and let him receive the most sacred blessing. Lin En stood there with a weird look on his face. However, because Nanako had her eyes closed and her whole body was trembling, she did not notice the expression on Lin En's face. After a brief silence of a few seconds, that indifferent voice sounded. The contract is concluded. I accept your wish. Then the huge figure in the light curtain turned around and enveloped Lin En with his boundless will. There was a brief silence. You can vaguely see that the figure in the light curtain suddenly froze in place. The next moment. What the hell? An extremely shocked voice suddenly came from the light curtain, without any trace of the indifferent tone from before. Chapter 5. You're still alive. Damn it. I should have known earlier that someone as awesome as you could never be harvested by a god. Your tone was filled with boundless shock. But it was at the moment when he just spoke. Lin En waved his hand and solidified the surrounding space, isolating everything around him. Keep your voice down. Lin En frowned and said, I knew it was you, a flat-haired lion. Why are you roaring so loudly? If my master hears it, I will beat you to death, right? But what Lin En didn't know was, just at that moment just now, Nanako had already heard clearly the words of the Divine Master. Her whole body trembled. Are you kidding? Could it be that his disciple actually knew the Divine Lord? Then Lin En's voice rang in her mind. Oh my god, no wonder this place felt so familiar the moment I stepped in, it turned out to be this silly cat, this fellow is not dead yet, so shameless indeed, he volunteered to give 90% of his essence to the Supreme God, and is he still alive now? Stupid cat, do you really think those gods are good? They keep you alive just to harvest you next time, and you don't even know you've been made into a leek. You're such a fool. But I do have some tricks. If I hadn't stepped into this place, I really wouldn't have been able to sense that this guy was so close to me. I'm thinking about whether I should devour it. This silly cat seems to have accumulated a lot of essence. He Nanako, Omega Omega. Listening to the disciple's inner mutterings, Nanako was shocked instantly. Oh my god! Not only does my disciple know the Holy Lord, but he seems to be even more powerful than him. Swallow the Holy Lord? Are you sure this isn't a demon? She tried hard to turn her head, but couldn't, as if the space around her was confined. This doesn't seem like something a Holy Lord would do, could it be his own disciple? This is impossible. After a few minutes, no one heard what they had communicated during these few minutes. In the hall, Lin En opened his dead fish eyes, looked at the aggrieved flat-haired lion in front of him, and said, I'll spare you this time. Remember, don't tell anyone about my hiding here. Since I know you're still alive, you should know that I have the ability to kill you. The Holy Lord prostrated himself on the ground in grievance and said, Don't worry. I'm very tight-lipped. I also know that the Supreme God is not a good person. That's why I have been hiding here for so many years, isn't it just to accumulate strength to get back my previous debts? Meow. Lin En immediately said impatiently, You are a lion, why are you imitating a cat? The Holy Lord said aggrievedly, Isn't this what you forced me to learn? If I didn't learn, you would beat me. Lin En rubbed his temples, glanced at the lowly master who was isolated not far away, and said with dead fish eyes, Okay, let's stop here for now. Just give me a random blessing so I can fool my master later. Then you move out as soon as possible. There's no room for 2 tigers in one mountain. We're so close together, we'll be too conspicuous. The Holy Lord muttered, But I was here first. Lin En, hey. The Holy Lord immediately shook his head like a rattle and said, "No. Nothing, you are the big brother, you have the final say, I will move immediately." Then he reluctantly stretched out his paw and pulled a handful of hair from his body, muttering, still as domineering as it was thousands of years ago. Then he blew it towards Lin En. Suddenly, the fluttering hair turned into countless points of light and merged into Lin En's body. Ding! You have received the blessing of the ancient Holy Spirit, and your divine affinity has increased by 10,000 points. Lin En sneezed, waved the light spots around him, and said painfully, "I was wondering why there is so much divine power here, and why the hair is falling off so badly. What are you hiding? Just pluck out all the hair when you have time. No one will see it anyway, so it's not shameful." The Holy Lord said stubbornly, "No, I can listen to you on everything else, but Mao is my bottom line." Half an hour later, Nanako with twin ponytails walked out of the sacred curtain holding a book. She looked at Lin En, who was whistling with his head in his hands, behind her with a strange and complicated look. "Disciple, what happened just now? Why can't I move suddenly? I can't hear any sound from the other side either." Lin En heard this and explained with a smile, his eyes sparkling with reverence, saying, "It was done by the great divine master. Because blessing requires an absolutely closed environment, he temporarily isolated it from the outside world." Nanako hesitated and asked, "Is this really the case?" Lin En stretched his body in front of Nanako and said respectfully, "Yes. The great divine master has blessed me with the Holy Spirit. I feel much lighter all over now. He is truly an incomparably great being." An expression of reverence and piety appeared on Lin En's face, and his eyes were filled with sincere praise. Just like a believer who has seen a miracle, the expression of praise is expressed vividly. What else could have happened? That stupid cat has a mouth full of fur. I've been telling him to pluck out all the fur, but he won't listen. Sacred Lord, it can only fool ordinary people. Times have really changed. Pets have become so powerful. But Master Loli shouldn't have discovered anything, right? It shouldn't be possible. I hid it so well, and I'm so handsome, Nanako, so. Why can he say pious and praiseful words with his mouth while muttering so much nonsense in his heart? Let's not talk about things like inexplicable self-confidence and narcissism. Why would you call the great divine master a stupid cat? So what is the identity of my apprentice? The more I dig, the more bizarre it becomes. Half an hour later, I returned to my residence. Nanako immediately picked up the feather pen, opened the diary, and quickly wrote a few lines. 1. There is something wrong with my disciple. Confirmed. 2. Is the disciple hiding his strength? A 1 in 500 million strength is a second-level mage? Questionable, needs to be investigated. 3. The disciple's identity is not simple. He is suspected to have lived for more than 1,000 years and has bullied the Holy Lord? 80% certain. 4. The disciple is a super narcissist and extremely confident, and really likes to discredit his master. Confirmed. 5. The disciple is not possessed by an evil spirit, nor is he a projection of a demon. Confirmed, but it cannot be ruled out that it is some other higher level being. Questionable. 6. The disciple must be beaten up. Put it on the agenda. And that was just a few hours later. A terrifying divine power suddenly erupted above the usually peaceful Winter Spring Valley. Nanako rushed out of her wizard tower almost immediately, and when she saw the scene in the sky, a look of shock appeared in her eyes. This is Chapter 6. The whole sky was brilliant. And that was in the direction of the sacred veil which they had just left. A beam of light shot up into the sky, piercing the sky. And in that terrifying sacred light, a huge white lion with wings on its back slowly emerged. Holy Lord! Nanako was shocked. The appearance of the Holy Lord immediately attracted the attention of all the mages in the Mage Association. Such a terrifying beast instantly frightened the young mages so much that their faces turned pale. What is that? Is it a monster invasion? But what kind of monster can break through the heavy defenses of our Winter Spring Valley? No. That's not right. It seems to be at the Holy Curtain. Could it be that? Is it the great divine master sleeping beneath the sacred veil? The Holy Lord has awakened. What on earth is going on? Wait a minute, there seems to be something wrong with the Holy Lord. Everyone stared and immediately looked in that direction. Then they saw. The huge white lion was still majestic and glorious, but on its back was a huge package. It's like picking up a piece of rag and quickly stuffing everything you can into it, then tying a knot and hanging it around your neck. The mages were stunned. Because of this shape, it is really unique. And that was the next moment. From all directions of Winterspring Valley, figures rose into the sky one after another. There were 6 powerful wizards whose bodies were wrapped in arcane magic. The power emanated from the leading wizard made people feel palpitations again and again. Those are the other 6 deacons who represent the highest fighting power in Winterspring Valley. The adult in charge. The old man in the grey magic robe who was leading the group half knelt on one knee in the air, looked solemnly at the Holy Lord, and said in astonishment, "May I ask, when did you wake up? And what is this?" He looked at the package behind the Holy Lord with a puzzled look on his face. Ever since Winterspring was founded. Apart from the 7 deacons asking for blessings, the number of times the Holy Lord awakened was no more than one could count on one hand. Not to mention manifesting directly in front of everyone like it is now. What's even stranger is, the package. The Holy Lord flapped his wings and said in a calm and majestic tone, "I'm here to say goodbye to you. From now on, I will leave Winterspring and will never come back. As for our contract, it will be invalidated." As soon as these words were spoken, the 6 deacons were instantly shocked. The first deacon Andrew was even more stunned and said in shock, "Master, may I ask what happened? Why did you suddenly leave Winterspring? This, has someone offended you, Master?" The Divine Lord secretly glanced in a certain direction and muttered to himself. Offend? Or maybe the word bullying would be more appropriate. But he still maintained an indifferent and dignified appearance, saying, "I have slept for 1,000 years. I just suddenly want to stretch my muscles, travel around the world and experience the beautiful scenery of the world. Who dares to offend me?" Then it added another sentence in its mind. "He is not a human." Andrew was stunned. Although the Lord said so, looking at its outfit, it doesn't seem like it just wanted to go out for a walk suddenly. Especially that rag package. Why do I always feel like I'm being kicked out? Andrew immediately suppressed the offensive thoughts in his mind and said in confusion, "If this is really the case, Great Lord, I hope you can stay a little longer. I will immediately arrange a sacrificial ceremony to see you off." Then he turned and glanced at the other 5 figures. Then it was discovered that a deacon was missing. He frowned and shouted in a certain direction, "Nanako! Why don't you come over and see the Lord off? As the 7th deacon of our Winterspring Valley, it is disrespectful to be so disrespectful." Nanako outside the mage tower was shocked and immediately came to her senses, realizing that she had been negligent. She immediately stood up and was about to fly. But the next moment, she heard the sudden sharp voice of His Majesty the Holy Lord. "Don't let her come over." The deacons were stunned for a moment. This sudden shout made them look confused. The Holy Lord swallowed his saliva. Then it immediately regained its sacred and majestic expression, cleared its throat, and said indifferently, "I mean, there's no need to go through so much trouble. Sacrificial ceremonies and the like are totally unnecessary. I'm leaving now. We'll see each other later." After saying this, the Holy Lord turned around, and his body was soon covered by the holy light again. But Andrew still saw that at the moment when the light enveloped the Lord stretched out his furry paws and wiped the cold sweat from his head. Faintly, he seemed to hear the faint sound of murmurs coming from the Master. "It will be difficult if we attract that guy." Then, everyone looked on in astonishment. The Divine Lord carried the package and rushed towards the sky in a hurry. Judging from the speed, it seemed as if there was something terrifying in Winterspring and they didn't want to stay here for even a second longer. The whole audience was silent. And under Nanako's wizard tower, Nanako stared blankly at the Holy Lord walking away. Then she turned her head and looked at her disciple not far away with an inquiring look. Lin En seemed to have just come back to his senses from the shock. He looked at his master with a bewildered face, as if he was still immersed in the great shock of the departure of the Divine Lord. He moved his lips and said dully, "Master, what on earth is going on? How could the great Divine Master?" Finally it left. "This silly cat was smart enough not to let me chase it away myself. He, after this idiot left, no one in Winterspring will recognize me anymore, and I can live in seclusion for a long time. It's just a pity. I was planning to go there tonight to get some free stuff, but I didn't expect it to run away so quickly. Lin En is mean." Naturally, Nanako heard everything he was thinking clearly. Nanako tried hard to suppress her shock. Really? The Holy Lord was indeed driven away by his own disciples. I was wondering why the Holy Lord left so suddenly. But This is too bad. Nanako is going crazy. But on the surface she still maintained the dignity of a master. At least before figuring out the disciple's origins, he must not be allowed to have any doubts. She put her chubby hands behind her back, raised her head and chest, closed her eyes, but at the same time opened them slightly and glanced at Lin En out of the corner of her eye. The great master is going on a long journey for a while. She accused, but, disciple, you must never forget the favor the Lord has bestowed upon you. You are a dependent who has been blessed by the Lord. You must always respect His Majesty the Lord. Do you understand? Lin En's face was filled with reverence, and he said firmly and seriously, yes. Master. I will swear to protect your Majesty until my death. What the hell? I have been hiding it for too long. I can even say something so against my will so easily, it's really unacceptable if I'm not given an Oscar. By the way, the blue-haired master looks pretty good in this pose. He is short and small, but he pretends to be tall and majestic. It's a cute contrast. If I push him down, he will probably scream loudly. Chapter 7. Snap. One after another, appeared on Nanako's forehead. The corners of Nanako's eyes twitched wildly, and the little hands on her chest clenched violently. This damn guy. She forced a gentle expression, waved her hand towards Lin En, and said, good disciple, come here. Lin En maintained a firm expression, strode over, pounded his chest with one hand, and said, Master, may I ask for your help? Nanako moved her hands gently, smiled very cutely, and said, bent down a little bit. Lin En was at a loss. Then he bent down so that he was the same height as his master Nanako. Master, you want to? Before he could finish his words, Nanako instantly stretched out her hands, pinched Lin En's 2 cheeks, and pulled hard with all her strength. Master! What are you doing? Nothing. My dear disciple. Master is in a bad mood and wants to vent his anger on someone. Just think of it as Master just throwing a tantrum. Master! Stop! Stop! Damn you, disciple! This is impossible. A few minutes later. Winter Spring Proving Grounds. What the hell is wrong with this damned 100-year-old loli? Is my period coming today? But the date doesn't match. I remember it should be on the 25th of every month. Or maybe it's menopause. It's possible. According to this cycle, it should be the second time, no, the third time. Nanako walked lightly in front, her long ponytail fluttering up and down. Following behind was Lin En, whose face was red and swollen, muttering to himself. Nanako had a proud look on her face. But you can still vaguely see the wildly throbbing nerves on your temples. Nanako put her hands on her hips, stopped in front of a big door, turned around, and looked at Lin En proudly. Do you know where this place is? Lin En looked around and asked hesitantly, Trial Field. Nanako crossed her arms, closed her eyes, nodded her head up and down, held her head high, and smiled, that's right, you have been in Winter Spring for many years, you should know that once you become a second-level mage, you must conduct multiple combat training sessions every week to improve your combat effectiveness. Lin En nodded. Nanako flicked the brim of her hat with one finger, revealing her sapphire eyes, and said, this is today's lesson. Master will arrange several trials for you. Remember, during the trials, you must skillfully use the magic that Master taught you. Only in this way can you defeat your opponent and win. It would be a shame if we couldn't win. Lin En, can we not have the trial? Nanako glanced at him and said, no. Lin En. The reason why Nanako brought him here. Training is one thing. But the main purpose is to verify the true strength of his disciple. Something like a 1 in 500 million strength being a second-level wizard, really matters to me no matter how I think about it. Nanako glanced at Lin En. Soon, after submitting the formalities, Nanako took Lin En into the trial field. The trial field was bustling with people, filled with young mages who came here for training. As a wizard, it is not enough to just cast magic. You must also have the ability to deal with different challenges in different environments. And Winter Spring Valley has the best training institution in the entire continent. Each year, Winter Spring captures a large number of magical beasts from all over the world for training, and even has extremely high-level demons in stock. Took Lin En to a venue. Nanako pressed the button of a magic device and glanced at Lin En. Pointing at the light gate that slowly appeared in front of the magic device, he said, go in. It's a trial ground simulated by magic. Don't worry, Master will assign you a magic beast of the same level as you. If you are seriously injured, the device will automatically teleport you out. Lin En touched his chin and asked tentatively, can we not fight? Nanako closed her eyes and raised her fist. What do you think? Lin En was helpless, holding his staff, and said, I know. Is this blue-haired Lolita up to something bad again? Training? Do I still need training? This is a joke. Alas, if it wasn't for the purpose of surviving for a while, who would come to this kind of kindergarten to play house? Shaking his head helplessly, Lin En disappeared into the light curtain. See Lin En leave. Without further ado, Nanako rushed into the magic control room like a gust of wind, pushed away the confused trial field controller, and quickly cut to the trial field where Lin En was. Looking at Lin En who was standing on the grass and looking around, Nanako snorted and her jewel-like eyes widened. My little dog disciple, I told you to hide your secrets in front of the master. This time, the master will definitely take off your underwear. Let's wait and see. She said harshly. This is the monitoring room. You can control the training content and the number of monsters in the corresponding trial field. Without further ado, Nanako's little hand pressed the button representing second-level monster with a snap. Let me give you some side dishes to whet your appetite first. Nanako said seriously. On the Violet Continent, magic has developed very efficiently and has even been used in daily life. Especially in winter-spring, it is very common to use magic to create many practical devices. And that was the next moment she pressed the button. A second-level monster slowly appeared in the trial field where Lin En was. Murloc Elite, Level 2, Adult, Agile, good at melee attacks, and has average strength scale armor. A very ordinary second-level monster. Nanako looked at Lin En carefully through the light curtain and said, you can't just release a higher-level monster right after entering. Take your time. Create a small glitch later and give the dog apprentice a larger one. In Nanako's opinion, this tiny second-level monster is definitely a piece of cake for the disciple who hides his strength. But the next moment, Nanako was shocked. In the light curtain, the little fishman rushed towards Lin En with a gurgling sound, and then suddenly charged and hit Lin En hard on the chest. Then Lin En flew out straight away like a kite with a broken string. Are you kidding me? Nanako was shocked. She grabbed her ponytail and stared at the little fishman in the light curtain who was stomping on her disciple wildly. Aren't you a 1 in 500 million level 2 wizard? You can't even beat a little fishman. Then in an instant, she heard her disciple's voice through the light curtain. Well, let it step on me for a few more minutes. I will pretend to be seriously injured and then go find the pastor sister to heal my wounded heart. Maybe Master Loli will feel bad for me and give me a few days off, so I can go back and lie down. By the way, is this little fish man a little malnourished? He has no strength at all to scratch his itch. Chapter 8. And in the trial field, Lin En held his head and wailed, looking extremely miserable. At the same time, he kept shouting. Master, I can't win. I can't do it anymore. Let me out. I'm going to be killed by the little fish man. The voice was so hoarse that it made people cry. Nanako was stunned by what she saw. If she hadn't been able to hear his inner voice, she would probably have believed it by now. Then she remembered that a few months ago, she found a first-level magical beast for him to train, and it seemed to be the same scene at that time. Then I actually gave him a few days off and took good care of him for a few days. I've been cheated. Nanako pulled her ponytail madly and gritted her teeth. She grabbed the magic microphone, stared and gritted her teeth, and shouted at Lin En inside, you dog disciple. Get serious. If you can't even beat a second-level fishman, go back and copy the Encyclopedia of Magic 500 times. I'm serious. The terrifying voice from the lowly master immediately echoed in Lin En's ears. Lin En. Master must be crazy, but that's not right. Wasn't it always true before? Every time I was beaten up by monsters, my lowly master would come over and give me a hug, and then give me a week off. Sure enough, menopause has arrived. Nanako, grinding teeth, then, under Nanako's gaze, the little fishman's kick suddenly missed for unknown reasons. Then Lin En roared as if he had used all his strength, rolled over, and hardly avoided the entanglement of the little fish man. He staggered to his feet. Lin En picked up the staff and immediately chanted a spell. In an instant, a huge ball of sacred flame appeared on the top of his staff. No. No. This sacred fire is too big, a little smaller, a little smaller, master is watching. And then, Nanako stared at him. The flame that suddenly exploded shrank in an instant and finally turned into a flame the size of a palm. The flame was so small that it was hard to say whether it would cause any harm if it hit a person. Nanako was stunned. Tisk tisk, this scale is just right. If master asks about it later, I will say it is the effect of divine blessing, but my control is too weak, and I can't control such a huge sacred fire. This flame is my true strength. I am simply a genius. Oh, Lin En was smug. Then Lin En smiled. Then, using a very strenuous and extremely difficult posture, he gritted his teeth and threw the flame in his hand with force. He looked like a novice who had no combat experience. Then the flame will be at a 30-degree angle, accidentally hitting the fishman's eyes, and accidentally burning his brain. Then, in a relatively lucky state, I defeated the terrifying second-level fishman with great difficulty. When the master came over, I accidentally fainted in the arms of the lowly master, and was naturally sent to the pastor's sister to heal my spiritual trauma. It's perfect. Lin En, you are awesome. Nanako listened in a daze as Lin En's voice came to her ears. Then look at the flame. It happened to be in the direction of a 30-degree angle. It hit the little fishman right in the eye. Plop! The little fishman fell down directly, with green smoke gushing out of his head. Lin En stretched out his hand towards the light curtain and showed an extremely tired smile. It's like saying, Master, I finally defeated this powerful enemy with great difficulty. Nanako stood there in a daze for 2 seconds. You take me for a fool. Nanako went crazy. She grabbed her ponytail and banged her head against the console in front of her. That's too much. This is too much. I had actually already planned in my mind what was going to happen next. And why can you act so realistically? If I hadn't been able to hear your inner voice, I wouldn't have been able to tell that your hardship expression was fake. She actually wanted to fall into my arms naturally. He even wanted to pretend to be injured and seek treatment from the pastor lady. Damn it! Damn it! Nanako banged her head against the console frantically. But it was at this time. All I heard was a series of strange crackling noises. She was startled for a moment, lowered her head and looked at the console. I saw that wisps of green smoke had been rising from it at some point, and the buttons that controlled the release of magical beasts of different levels were dodging frantically at this moment. In an instant, Nanako's eyes widened. Broken. Broken. Then she immediately raised her head reflexively, staring into the light curtain. Nanako, Omega Omega. All I saw was the trial field within the light curtain. Lin En stood there like a lonely ant, and in front of him, countless monsters appeared. From the 1st level to the 9th level, even the top demons and void creatures slowly appeared along with the out-of-control teleportation device. In an instant, Lin En's trial field turned into a place where demons were dancing wildly. In comparison, Lin En looks as small as a lonely sapling. Crows flew overhead. Then Lin En turned his head and smiled at the light curtain, saying, Master, are you sure that a 2nd-level magician like me can kill so many top-level monsters and demons? It's over. It's over. In the control room, Nanako stared, grabbed her big cloak, and slapped the flames on the console hard. It's obviously such a sturdy machine. I've crashed into it many times before and nothing happened. Why is it smoking today? Disciple. There's just a small problem. It will be fixed soon. You have to hold on. Nanako anxiously shouted over there with the microphone. Originally, she was thinking of creating a small malfunction, but she didn't expect that this broken console would actually malfunction. Lin En. Control panel failure? That should be a rage. The magic equipment in the magic tower at home is often broken by the master. Then according to the normal routine, the master should use magic next. Water ball technique. Nanako shouted, grabbed the ponytail, and suddenly stretched out her hand. I saw a big water ball hit the flaming console with a bang. The flames above were immediately extinguished. Disciple. Don't worry. Master has put out the fire. And if my guess is correct, the console is completely scrapped. Lin En speculated. Oh no. Disciple. The fire is out. But for some reason, the console still cannot be operated. Nanako's loud scream came from the other side of the light curtain. Of course. Lin En muttered. Then, the lowly master would kick the door and rush out, and because of being too anxious, his left foot would step on his right foot and fall flat on his face, Lin En speculated in his mind. Chapter 9. Outside the control room. Plop. Nanako was too anxious and stepped on her right foot with her left foot, falling heavily to the ground. Face the ground. All the mages in the trial square outside the control console were stunned. Then he looked in astonishment at the smoking control room and the loli who rushed out of it and fell to the ground. Go call the magician. Nanako stretched out her hand and pressed her hat, shouting, the control console has malfunctioned, and my disciple is trapped in the trial field and can't get out. Save him quickly. When the mages in the square saw the control room with billowing black smoke, they all panicked and immediately went to ask for help from a professional magician. At the same time, in the trial field, Lin En opened his dead fish eyes and glanced at the group of monsters opposite. Countless high-level monsters and demons bared their sharp fangs, with fierce light flashing in their eyes. Many demons even showed cruel grins. They approached Lin En step by step. In their eyes, Lin En, a little second-level magician, did not pose any threat at all. They were all captured by Winterspring. For them, slaughtering the Winterspring mages is definitely something they are very willing to do. But Lin En was not panicked at all. He looked at the light screen, touched his chin, shook his head and said, Master Loli should be out now, right? He shrugged. I feel very helpless. Otherwise, why would he say that his lowly master is stupid? Although he is very good at magic, he is rash and will make a fool of himself when he gets anxious. But now that the master has gone out, then what comes next? Lin En smiled slightly. And it was almost at the moment when Lin En turned his head. The countless high-level ferocious beasts rushed towards Lin En in an instant, their eyes were fierce and their sharp teeth seemed able to tear Lin En to pieces at any time. The terrifying roar and hideous grin, accompanied by the fierce attack, disappeared in an instant. Seeing that countless high-level monsters and demons were about to trample Lin En into meat paste. But that was the moment. Lin En took a look at them. His pupils suddenly contracted, and an incomparably terrifying pressure instantly swept out from Lin En's body. In an instant, the monsters that were rushing over were immediately hit by a huge energy, and they flew backwards one after another. Bang bang, even if it is a powerful 9th order monster. Even some high-level demons that only city-breaking magicians can contend with. None of them could withstand the terrifying power emanating from that glance, and they crashed heavily to the ground like duckweed in the wind. For a moment, all the monsters were shocked. They were trembling with fear, their faces filled with astonishment. In their field of vision, the second-level magician who had been so weak just now, at this moment, was emitting a black aura that was almost tangible and soaring into the sky. That is the materialization of pressure, an aura so powerful that it is almost as powerful as a god. But what a joke! Why would a second-level wizard like him suddenly reveal such a terrifying aura that only a demigod could have? Kneel down. A cold voice. Almost subconsciously, the legs of the monsters and demons who were in great shock suddenly softened. Plop. Plop. Their legs bent uncontrollably and they fell to the ground one after another. Even some plant-like monsters without legs pulled themselves up by the roots and crawled on the ground trembling. So scary. Who on earth is he? Why do I feel that he is much more terrifying than the supreme ruler of Winterspring? Stop talking nonsense and kneel down. Do you want to die? They were sweating coldly and trembling with fear. They even felt that this kind of pressure was colder than the might of the giant dragon clan, and more fierce than the king of the abyss. Even for a moment, they seemed to have a feeling. The one standing opposite them was not a human at all, but an ancient, unspeakable existence. None of the monsters dared to move. Their teeth were chattering as they looked at Lin En in horror, and they even felt their hearts were slowly freezing. Looking at those monsters trembling in fear, Lin En touched his chin and said, I really miss it. Those days when I could act recklessly and unscrupulously are gone forever. Lin En was disappointed. Carrying the staff, he strode towards them. Without exception, all the magical beasts that were swept by his gaze trembled in fear and dared not move. Not bad. Not bad. Lin En looked at the monsters, a look of satisfaction and admiration appeared on his face. I had been hiding before and had never come into contact with the true strength of Winterspring. Now it seems that Winterspring, as the strongest guardian organization in Violet, is indeed very capable. The iron-backed horned lizard is about to break through from the 9th level to the king level. The high-level demons of the abyss can almost serve as black knights of the king's guard. A fallen unicorn whose appearance could cause the destruction of a small city. Being able to keep so many powerful monsters in captivity definitely shows how powerful Winter Spring is. Lin En looked around in admiration. Then, Lin En stopped in front of a succubus with wings on its back. Succubus. From the abyss beyond the Violet Continent. This is a humanoid demon with wings on its back and horns on its head. They usually appear in the form of women and often appear in people's nightmares to suck their essence. As Lin En watched, the succubus trembled violently, with cold sweat on her head dripping onto the ground. What does he want to do? He was clearly a second-level mage just now, why did he suddenly emit such a terrifying aura? This kind of pressure is like... Are you the fifth king of the abyss, a follower of Lilith? Lin En's voice came. The succubus trembled all over and subconsciously raised her head to look at the young human wizard in front of her. How could he know? And why does he know the name of my lord? Then she saw Lin En staring at the mark on her broken shoulder guard. That mark represents the power of the fifth king of the abyss. The succubus was stunned and asked, You know our master? Lin En nodded and said, I know her. She tastes pretty good and works well. Demons, Omega. It tastes good. Life is good. Is it really okay to say such things? He is the fifth king of the abyss, a king-level powerful being second only to the gods. The succubus trembled and said, May I ask? May I ask who you are? Lin En looked down and smiled faintly, Haha, I haven't been to the abyss for a long time. Have I fallen to the point where even you low-level demons don't recognize me? It was at that moment. Right within the sight of that succubus. A terrifying figure with huge demon horns on his head, wearing silver-grey death armor, and huge bone wings extending from his back slowly overlapped with Lin En. At that moment, the succubus' pupils dilated instantly and she recognized Lin En's identity. No. It's absolutely impossible. You are they. Chapter 10. There was great fear in her eyes, as if the figure itself was the embodiment of fear. But before it could finish its words, she suddenly realized that she couldn't pronounce the name. Her throat was dry, and that syllable seemed like a taboo. The knowledge of that existence in the brain seemed to be wiped out in an instant, and became blank. But she still looked at Lin En with great horror. Because she recognized it. It's him. It's that existence. No wonder I felt that breath was very familiar before. Because of that terrifying existence, it can be said that almost everyone in the abyss knows about it. Her whole body was limp and powerless, even her breathing became extremely difficult. She could only shiver there in a daze, and kept muttering the syllable that she could not utter. Because she knows. Including their king, Lilith. In the abyss, their entire race was once the efforts of that existence. Lin En patted her shoulder and smiled faintly, I've been away for so many years. Is the situation so chaotic that even you succubi have run to Violet? He then stopped paying attention to the succubus. His only thought now is to wait until the gods appear. He is not very interested in knowing the current situation of the entire continent. Then he examined the surrounding monsters, looked down at them, and smiled faintly, want to live. All the monsters were immediately shocked, and then became extremely frightened, and immediately nodded their heads like chicks licking rice. Think. The monsters were dry-mouthed. Lin En turned around and walked towards where he was just now. Then he sat down, and a small pangolin monster quickly rushed under Lin En's butt to act as a cushion. He crossed his legs and smiled faintly, if you want to live, then do as I say. The monsters trembled in fear, waiting for the orders of this terrifying existence. Lin En looked around, then pointed at a giant beast and said, You, come here. The giant beast, several meters tall, walked towards them with its eyes wide open and trembling. Then Lin En rolled up his sleeves and said, Take a bite here. The giant beast was instantly startled and said, This, I don't dare. Snap. Lin En slapped him. Okay, I'll bite. The giant beast opened its mouth revealing its sharp teeth, and then bit Lin En's arm hard. Crack. Lin En immediately screamed, Wow, you actually bit me. When these words were spoken, the giant beast was shocked. Isn't this what you asked me to bite? Why can you say such a thing? Besides. He stared in dismay at the arm-sized circular gap on his neat and white row of teeth. My teeth are broken, and you can actually make such a scream. Shouldn't I be the one screaming? Lin En looked at the faint white teeth marks on his arm speechlessly and sighed, Please try harder. Who are you trying to fool with these 2 teeth marks? The giant beast was about to cry. How can you tell that I didn't put in any effort? My teeth are all broken, okay? You are just too hard, I can't bite you, okay? Lin En had no choice but to reach out his hand and pinch the tooth marks with his fingernails. It's bleeding. But Lin En felt that the amount of bleeding was not heavy. So he reached out his hand, wiped a bunch of the beast's blood from its forehead, and wiped it on his arm. Perfect. It was bloody and you could tell at a glance that the injury was serious. All the monsters looked stunned. But Lin En still felt it was not real enough. He frowned slightly. Looking around, his eyes instantly fell on the succubus hiding in the corner. The succubus's whole body trembled suddenly. Come here. Lin En waved. The succubus had no choice but to walk over tremblingly, with its tail between its legs, not daring to say a word. Then, under the dull gaze of many monsters and demons, Lin En grabbed the succubus's fingers and used her sharp nails to scratch her clothes a few times. Suddenly, the clothes became tattered. Have you brushed your teeth? Lin En asked. The succubus said dully, after rinsing my mouth. Lin En nodded. Then, he grabbed her waist unexpectedly, pressed his lips against hers, and gave the succubus a passionate French kiss. Demons, Omega Omega. I was kissed forcefully. The succubus' eyes widened, her body stiffened with fear, her mind went blank, and she didn't dare to move at all. Even though she was a succubus, being forcefully kissed was really too sudden. Then she immediately felt a stream of horrifying spirits continuously pouring into her body from the other person's mouth. It's going to explode. My body is going to explode. It's going to be filled up, so full that it's about to overflow. The succubus struggled frantically. After a long time, Lin En leaned back refreshed, then took out a mirror from somewhere and looked at his pale face with satisfaction. Yes, he seemed a little lethargic and frightened. When Master asked, he said that he was affected by the power of the succubus. The demons stood there in a daze. The succubus was even mumbling incoherently, and she looked unwell. She could feel that he had only forced a little bit of her mental power to pass on to her, but the purity of this little bit of mental power was enough to almost cause a high-level demon like her to explode. The spiritual power in the other person's body is so rich that it is almost like an ocean. It's about to overflow. She murmured. How terrifying is his strength. After completing all these preparations, Lin En lay there, then stared at the monsters with dead fish eyes, squinting and said, from now on, you guys can fight each other. The more chaotic the scene, the better. I want a chaotic battlefield. If any of you disobey my orders. He tilted his head, and then a gentle expression appeared on his face. Of course I won't do anything to you, haha. All the monsters were scared to death. Who would believe such words? A few minutes later. Disciple. How are you? The light gate leading to the trial field was instantly kicked open by a loli with a ponytail. Nanako rushed in with a group of magicians. She stared, looking around the trial field for her disciple. After leaving the control room, she immediately found the magician who was responsible for making and maintaining various magical devices, and then rushed over in a hurry. But the next moment, they were shocked by the chaotic scene before them. The trial field was littered with the shattered corpses of monsters. In the distance there was a melee, with high-level monsters fighting each other frantically. Disciple. Where is my disciple? Nanako stared and searched quickly. Soon, she found Lin En in a corner, covered in blood, dying and unconscious. My disciple. Nanako was horrified and rushed over quickly. She quickly supported Lin En and let him lean on her legs. Looking at Lin En's dying appearance, her heart was broken. Really? I heard in my heart that the 1 in 500 million strength thing was all just my disciple's bragging. I am so stupid. Why can't I take such things seriously? It's okay now. My disciple is going to be doomed. She immediately hugged Lin En's head and burst into tears, feeling extremely guilty. Chapter 11. My disciple, please don't die. It's Master's fault. Master accidentally broke the control console. Please don't get hurt. Tisk tisk, as expected, the stupid Master is so easy to deceive, it's worth it that I smeared so much blood on my clothes. Master's IQ probably only goes so far. So what conditions should I propose? In this case, Master Loli should agree to any condition, right? Back massage, foot rubbing and shoulder kneading? Or 2 weeks of idle time? Or, hey, Lin En, you are really an LSP. You dare to think of such a request as pushing the master down? The voice of the heart came. Nanako's expression suddenly froze. Lin En finally opened his eyes weakly, stretched out his trembling hand, and grasped Nanako's sleeve tremblingly. His lips were dry and cracked, like a patient about to take his last breath. He said weakly, "Master, am I still alive?" The voice was so trembling. As if with an incomparable attachment to life. With an immense desire to survive. Made. Awesome. Lin En, your acting is unmatched. You are so outstanding, does your mother know? You can even act in a movie now. Nanako stared blankly at the haggard and dying appearance of her disciple in her arms, and listened to the extremely narcissistic voice of her disciple coming from her head. So. This guy. Obviously nothing happened. Nanako is going crazy. If she couldn't hear people's thoughts, she would have been fooled by his acting skills. If he was really so weak that he was about to die, where would all those narcissistic thoughts come from? Moreover, he was even thinking about how to pretend to be miserable and ask his master for something like this. Damn it! That's right. You're still alive. Nanako gritted her teeth wildly, resisting the urge to beat him to death. And he's alive and well. Lin En weakly pressed his head into Nanako's arms, grasped her hand dejectedly, and murmured, "Is that so?" "That's great, master. As long as you are still alive, I can continue to stay by your side. I really don't want to leave you at all." The emotion in the voice is so sincere. Everyone who heard it shed tears. Even Nanako, who could hear his thoughts, was almost moved by these words. Ah! My skills have improved. I can actually say such cheesy words without blushing or feeling embarrassed. I am so strong. Although the master is 100-year-old Lolita, she is still a Lolita after all. Hearing such affectionate words from her disciple, she should be moved to tears, right? It seems like this favorability is going to increase rapidly. Nanako. So. Why do you want me to hear your voice? Nanako was pulling her two ponytails frantically. Can't you just let me be touched a little? Why do you always think of all sorts of messy things to ruin the atmosphere? An 100-year-old loli or something. Don't call me by such random nicknames. Nanako's eyes twitched wildly, and she gritted her teeth and said, "Since you still have the strength to speak, then it should be fine. But Master is really curious, with so many demons and monsters, why didn't they kill you, my disciple?" Lin En lay in Nanako's arms with a look of disappointment and said weakly, "Because, the disciple was too weak, they looked down on him, and soon a conflict broke out among them. In the chaos, the disciple was lucky enough to save his life." "Of course not. I was the one who smeared the blood, I was the one who pinched them, and I was the one who instigated the fight between them. You don't even have a king-level monster, and you still want to hurt me? This is simply a joke, there is no one who can fight. Of course, it is impossible to tell that the lowly master is so stupid. After all, her body is small and her brain capacity is not that big. By the way, if master heard what I was thinking, she would definitely be very angry, ha 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 hiccups. Nanako. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. Try to think about other things. Don't pay attention to your disciple's voice, but convex, but I still can't help but want to hit him. This BD. Nanako turned her head, trying to calm herself down, and then looked at the high-level terrifying monsters one after another in the depths of the trial field. After seeing those monsters at such a close distance, even she felt a little nervous. If I try to forget my disciple's narcissism. The fact that he could easily subdue so many high-level monsters was enough to show his strength. If I really follow my own speculation, this little disciple of his might be stronger than all 7 of their deacons combined. But the veins in her temples throbbed wildly. This kind of bad character really makes people angry. Soon, those high-level monsters were subdued and imprisoned by the magicians brought by Nanako. A magician came over and said seriously, "Report to Butler Nanako, all the monsters have been subdued. We interrogated several demons, and it was indeed as your disciple said. A conflict had indeed broken out between them, and that's why they were fighting each other and had no time to care about your disciple. Your disciple is indeed very lucky. Haha, of course, the strength is here, who dares to talk nonsense, isn't it obvious? And just to be on the safe side, I also cast a silencing spell on them, so they can't say a word that they shouldn't." She glanced at the extremely weak disciple in her arms who was still coughing, and listened to his arrogant voice. Nanako clenched her fists and gritted her teeth, I know. You guys go down. The magician looked at Lin En sympathetically, and then whispered, Master Nanako, your disciple is so seriously injured. Would you like us to send him to the church for recuperation? A very outstanding pastor lady has just arrived. If she helps, he should recover soon. Lin En's eyes suddenly lit up. But in the instant gaze that came from Nanako, Lin En became weak and powerless again. He said sadly, that is of course great. After I recover quickly, I still have a lot to learn from Master. I want to become a magician as powerful as Master. I have to work harder. Such sincere and touching words instantly moved the magician to tears. He wiped the moisture from his eyes and said, Lady Nanako, it is really a great thing to have a disciple like this who loves to study and makes progress every day. The magicians around nodded. Looking at the tearful faces of the mages around her, Nanako, who knew the truth, was almost angry enough to faint. She suppressed her explosive mood, took a deep breath, gritted her teeth and said, Yes, I also think it is a great thing. In that case, after recovery, I will practice for 23 hours a day and take out an hour to sleep and eat. I think my disciple will be happy to accept it. Lin En's expression froze instantly. Chapter 12. 2 days later. In the towering magic hall of Winterspring Valley. From the high dome, beams of light were projected one after another, making the entire hall sparkle and look extremely sacred. This is the power center of the entire Winterspring Valley and the Round Table Council Hall of the Seven Deacons. Every once in a while, or when some unusual changes occur on the continent, the Seven Deacons must discuss and respond together. And at this moment, the Seven Deacons gathered here. Andrew, the first deacon sitting in the first seat, flipped through the magic book in his hand, raised his head, and said seriously, My fellow deacons, it has been almost 3 months since we discovered the ancient elf king's court in the Western Empire. I wonder how you have deciphered the text on those secret scrolls. He looked around and his eyes fell on Nanako who was sitting opposite him and was distracted. The little loli was lying there, with a bubble of varying sizes rising and falling on her nose, and her even breathing made the people around her feel extremely embarrassed. Andrew's eyes suddenly became stern. Nanako, you speak first. Instantly, Nanako stood up reflexively, staring with wide eyes, and said, Is the meeting over? Can we leave now? It was quiet all around. Crows flew overhead, cawing. The other deacons around were all trying hard to hold back their smiles, and Andrew's face was ashen, with his beard fluttering in anger. He said solemnly, I'm talking about the ancient elven secret scroll that was distributed 3 months ago. Deciphering the ancient elven writing is very important to us. How's your progress? Nanako was stunned for 2 seconds. Ancient elf secret scroll. When she said these words in a confused tone, you could hear a pin drop. Andrew took a deep breath and said, Nanako, please don't tell me that you forgot. Nanako suddenly shuddered and instantly remembered the task assigned to her 3 months ago. She vaguely remembered that there seemed to be such a thing. 3 months ago, the ancient elf king's court was discovered. As Winterspring Valley, it was naturally the first to bear the brunt, and successfully obtained a large number of elven documents from various major forces. However, the text above is very difficult to decipher because it was written too long ago. Therefore, these top mages had to find a way to crack it themselves. She remembered. 3 months ago, I did return to the mage tower with the secret scroll, and then I casually placed it on the table, groaning and preparing to take a nap. Then I heard my disciple say that the table was not stable and he wanted to find something to cushion it. Moment. Nanako widened her eyes. Pad the corner of the table. She murmured. What? Andrew's eyes widened and his beard flew. Nanako was immediately startled and said with wide eyes, No, it's nothing. Nanako cracked it very successfully, and she is about to crack the whole secret scroll. It can be said to be a great success. Yes. That's right. Nanako nodded her head like a sieve, and her long ponytail kept dancing up and down. Andrew gritted his teeth, almost laughing in anger, and said, Really? It seems Nanako is really amazing. I have only cracked 2 pages in the past 3 months, but Nanako has already cracked the entire secret scroll. She is really amazing. Nanako touched the back of her head and smiled awkwardly but politely. Yeah, no. Nanako stared and shook her head frantically. Snap. Andrew slapped the table and said in a low voice, Okay, since you said so, Nanako, bring the ancient elf secret scroll you cracked here before noon tomorrow so that everyone can see it. Meeting adjourned. Andrew shouted and walked away. Outside the 7th Deacon's Mage Tower. Lin En was lying on her rocking chair, holding a book in her hands, rocking the chair back and forth. Squinting sleepy eyes, feeling the cool breeze, taking a sip of tea. Ding! You have successfully slacked off for 2 hours. Congratulations, you have earned 20 magic points. Ding! You have enjoyed the cool breeze for 2 hours and feel comfortable. Congratulations, you have gained 20 points of mental strength. Ding! You read a certain color book and felt excited. Congratulations, you have gained 20 points of endurance. Life, if I could always be so lazy. Lin En squinted his sleepy eyes and said, this life is worth it. Naturally, she didn't touch a single word of the task of copying the magic book left by Master Loli. The 2000 push UPS and meditation required were naturally meant to be a slog. If people are not salty fish, then what is the meaning of living? 2 days have passed since the last accident on the training ground. During these 2 days, he naturally went to the church comfortably and treated his physical and mental trauma with the pastor lady. Gained a lot of points. I have to say. The pastor's voice is so gentle, and her hands are so soft when you hold them. If it weren't for the lowly master who was determined to pull him out, he felt that he could have stayed in there for a year or 2. The cold wind was howling. At this moment, Lin En, who was lying comfortably in the rocking chair, was suddenly startled. Then he stood up, looked up at the sky, and said, Master is coming back. And that was when he had just finished speaking. Far sky. The wind is howling. I saw a loli with twin ponytails wearing a blue robe and a big wizard hat, riding a broom, rushing towards the wizard tower quickly. It's Nanako. Lin En immediately stood up, tore open the space, and threw his rocking chair and picture book into it. Then he waved his hands towards the sky and shouted, Welcome back, Master. That's right. The apprentice's personality still needs to be maintained. As a stupid but caring apprentice, it is very necessary for the master to greet him as soon as he comes back. But Nanako seemed not to hear her disciple's voice at all. Lin En was startled and speculated, Are you distracted? Then, under Lin En's gaze, Nanako, who was riding on a broom, did not slow down at all, and with a bang, she crashed into the mage tower, creating a big hole. Billowing black smoke immediately rose from the hole. Lin En nodded and said, I was distracted indeed. Then I heard a lot of crackling noises coming from the mage tower. All the way from the top floor to the first floor. Then the door opened with a bang. Nanako, whose body was charred and covered in dust, rushed out of the wizard tower quickly with a thick book in her arms and wide eyes. 0.5 seconds. Lin En said speechlessly, It seems that Master has rolled down the stairs again. I didn't hear what Lin En said. Nanako slammed the book heavily on the table. The sapphire eyes looked down at the book, sparkling with high morale. Deciphering the entire secret scroll in 1 day is not a difficult task for me. She turned her head suddenly, her ponytail fluttering, staring at Lin En and said, Don't you think so, disciple? Lin En didn't even think about it, nodded decisively, and replied, Yes, Master, you are the best, you can do anything. Hehe, no matter what the lowly master says, just agree with it. I don't need to know what it is. Because according to past experience, the only result of the blue-haired lowly showing such fighting spirit is that she will definitely lose heart after half an hour. I can even use a stopwatch to accurately time the time, and guarantee that it will not be more than a minute or less than a second. Chapter 13. Snap snap. Nanako's head kept popping up one after another. She gritted her teeth, raised her little fist with a click, and her small eyebrows twitched wildly. This dog disciple. Damn it. Ever since I was able to hear his inner voice, I have been trying hard not to get angry every time. How could he look down upon his master so much? But now is not the time to pay attention to him. If I don't decipher the ancient elf scroll within 1 day, I will be in big trouble. Without further ado, Nanako quickly sat on the chair, looked focused, and picked up the feather pen and manuscript paper. Then he solemnly opened the first page of the secret scroll. Then Nanako maintained that posture, as if time had stopped, frozen there. The wind was blowing. Under Lin En's gaze, half an hour later. 3-2-1 Lin En counted silently in his mind. And just when he counted to 1, Nanako fell on the table with a bang, extremely punctually. With her face pressed against the secret scroll, her long ponytail drooped, she murmured, "It's too difficult. My mind is blank. I can't think of anything, it's so sad. How can I understand ancient elven writing?" Haha, it is true. Ancient elven writing? Oh, it looked familiar to me just now. Isn't this the book I used as a cushion on the corner of my desk a few days ago? Does this need to be cracked? Isn't this something that can be solved with just a brain? Oh, I forgot, the ancient elves have been extinct for 1,000 years, no wonder people nowadays can't understand it. Brush, brush, brush. Nanako's ahog hair instantly stood up like an antenna. Both ears stood up instantly. Could it be that the dog disciple? She was immediately shocked and thought, he can understand the words on this secret scroll. Nanako immediately stood up, stared with wide eyes, turned her head, and stared at Lin En intently. Lin En, who was leaning on a chair not far away reading a romance novel, suddenly felt a chill on her back. He looked doubtfully from above the book and said, "Master, what's the matter?" Nanako originally wanted to ask directly, but immediately swallowed the words back. No. If I ask directly, it will definitely make my disciple suspicious. If his dog disciple found out that he could hear his thoughts, he would be doomed. Come and copy the magic formula. She slapped the table proudly and said, "Don't take it for granted that you are lazy while this master isn't paying attention. Have you forgotten what I said before? Study hard and make progress every day." Lin En. Why is this blue-haired loli so angry today? Why did you suddenly want to force me to study today? Shouldn't I have been depressed for several days when I encountered such a thing in the past? There is a problem, it got hard too fast today. Lin En muttered. He had no choice but to put down the novel in his hand, walk to the opposite side, and sit on the chair under Nanako's stern gaze. He glanced at the secret scroll in front of Nanako. Haha, it really is the writing of the second generation of elves. I will just watch the joke here. It is impossible to decipher it with only this secret scroll and no other auxiliary materials. This is something that the stupid blue-haired Lolita would never have thought of. Haha, I know, but I won't tell you. Hey, just for fun, Nanako. Resisting the urge to beat him up, Nanako glanced at him casually and said, "What? Disciple, can you understand the words on it?" Lin En shook his head and said with a smile, "Master, you are kidding me. How can I understand the words that even you can't understand? How could I not understand it? I created the characters for the second generation of elves. How could I not understand them? What a joke. Back then, I was an elf." Hearing her disciple's thoughts, Nanako was shocked and an expression of extreme shock appeared in her heart. What? The disciple created it himself. What kind of joke is this? According to relevant documents, the ancient elves' heyday was 1,000 years ago. Although they suddenly became extinct for unknown reasons, causing many related records and materials to be destroyed, but, etc. Nanako's eyes suddenly widened. She suddenly remembered that her disciple had said in his heart before that he had lived for at least 1,000 years. Could it be that? Nanako stared, picked up the secret scroll, and covered her face with it to prevent her disciple from noticing anything suspicious on her expression. Her eyes moved rapidly. No matter what, I must take this opportunity to test him out. Immediately. Nanako hummed, put down the book proudly, pointed at the words on the secret scroll, and said, "It's normal that you can't understand it, but don't bring Master along. Master is very smart. With just a little study, he can almost understand texts like this." Lin En was stunned and asked, "Really?" Nanako ignored his thoughts, sat upright, pointed at the first line of the secret scroll, and said proudly, "Disciple, repeat after me, Aboshi Le." Lin En was immediately shocked. What the hell? I'm still a blue-haired loli. Even if you want to pretend to be relaxed and happy in front of me, you should at least get something from the human world. It's fine even if you translate it into a pornographic novel for me. How can I agree with you when you talk nonsense like this? Lin En was complaining madly in his heart. Nanako glared and complained so much that even her own face turned red. Lin En was helpless, and his eyes fell on the title page of the secret scroll. The moment he saw the above content, the expression on Lin En's face fell. The content above made him a little concerned. In the year 2021 of the Elven era, the Elf King issued an order to all the Elven warriors in the Violet Continent and asked them to gather in the royal court, ready to respond to the order of the great first king of Violet and fight against the gods. We have become the betrayers of God, and we will surely become the killers of God, and we will blow the horn of Ragnarok for them. Elf warriors of the future, I will record our great journey here. If we cannot return, this document will become the only evidence of our existence. Until then. Nanako was shocked and listened in amazement to her disciple's voice echoing in her mind. It was a language she had never heard of. But because of my inner voice, I was able to understand its meaning for a moment. She raised her head in astonishment and looked at Lin En, who was staring at the secret scroll in her hand silently. The shock in her heart was simply indescribable. My disciple actually recognizes the words on it. Ancient Elvish writing from 1,000 years ago. That was the writing of an ancient civilization that had already been extinct. It represented an extremely glorious history. It seems. My disciple's inner voice really did not deceive me. Her breathing quickened, and she immediately used her brain to quickly record what she heard. Then nervously turned the page. Chapter 14. Lin En just glanced at the contents on the page, and then his eyes fell on the romance novel in his hand. But his inner voice is still narrating that history. Obviously, although he appeared to be very casual on the surface, his mind was still on the secret scroll. The great first king of Violet has always been the hope of our entire elves. This ancient being has saved us more than once in history. Compared to the god of nature who never cares about our lives, the first king is undoubtedly more like our father god. Although His Majesty has repeatedly requested to ban it, the spread of the first king's faith within our tribe has never been cut off. In August of the year 2021 of the Elven era, the gods descended. In less than a day, 3/4 of the northern human army was crushed and wiped out. I have never seen such a terrifying creature. Is that a god? It is indeed a terrifying creature. But we are not afraid. We believe that under the leadership of the first king, we will work together with all of His Majesty's family members to chop off the heads of those gods and achieve the final victory. Listen to the voice of your disciple. Nanako's breathing was rapid. The historical scene recorded in the secret scroll seemed to emerge in my mind, as well as the battle song of countless elves fighting against God under the leadership of that king. It turns out that this secret scroll contains such a piece of history. She secretly glanced at her apprentice's expression. But he was seen leaning there, silently looking at the novel in his hand, as if he didn't care about that period of history at all. Then she heard her disciple's voice again. A bunch of idiots, they don't know how terrifying the existence they are facing is, and they keep following like fools. After fighting with those gods once, I knew I would lose without a doubt. I was even ready to die. You idiots are still thinking about victory, victory, you are simply hopeless. You are a bunch of stupid people. I favored you in the first place just to use you. All my followers have defected, but you are the only ones who are still stubborn and want to follow me to be buried with me. You are so stupid, you deserve to be exterminated. This voice of the heart. Obviously, this was his evaluation after reading the text on the 2 pages. But Nanako could clearly sense the anger, guilt, and hatred in her disciple's heart through his voice. Nanako's whole body trembled instantly. Because she could see what her disciple was thinking. It's like he is. He is the first king of Violet worshipped by the ancient elves. Nanako. Nanako was really shocked this time. Because the subjective feeling in the disciple's heart is really too strong. It was so intense that it felt like I had experienced it myself. No. I must check the information of the first king of Violet. This secret is too shocking. She said hurriedly in her heart. Nanako felt heat radiating from her whole body. If one of the disciples' identities is really the first king of Violet, then he is simply a living history. No. Check out page 3. I really want to know what happens next in that battle with God. She breathed rapidly and quickly turned to the 3rd page. Then he immediately held his breath, pricked up his ears, and listened carefully to his disciple's voice. There was an obvious pause of a few seconds. The secrets that must be told to the elf girl late at night. Her face flushed slightly, her beautiful red lips gently opened, and her slender hands gently stroked the protagonist's beautiful face. Snap. Nanako instantly closed the secret scroll in her hand, stared with her eyes, and a blush instantly spread from the base of her neck to her entire cheeks. Lin En. Wow, Q, what is this dog lowly doing? Let me finish reading. It's obviously the exciting part. Turn the page when I say turn the page. Hey, that's not right. Why is Master's face so red? Could it be that Master can really understand the words above? He looked at Nanako hesitantly, looking her up and down, as if he wanted to see through her. Nanako's heart suddenly tightened. Damn it! Damn it! Am I going to be suspected by my disciple? But it's not my fault at all. Who could have known that the third page of this secret scroll was actually a pornographic story written by ancient elves? This must be because the mages in charge of compiling the secret scrolls could not understand the text on them, so they mistakenly mixed up the different books. Damn it! It's so damn terrible. Nanako coughed lightly and pretended to know nothing. He sat upright and opened the fourth page of the secret scroll. She let out a cute cry, and then suddenly, Nanako! Snap! Nanako stared and closed the book at an unimaginable speed. She's going crazy. Why is the fourth page still filled with pornographic stories? And you can just glance at me, you dog disciple, what are you thinking about in your mind? Seeing Nanako's reaction, Lin En finally confirmed his guess. He looked at Nanako thoughtfully. Sure enough, this blue-haired girl can really understand the words I created. I really underestimated her. If you don't understand, why would you blush after reading those 2 pornographic articles? Could it be that my lowly master is really a genius who is extremely smart and can understand things at a glance? Lin En was confused. Nanako stared, her face turning redder and redder as she listened to her disciple's doubts. She herself felt embarrassed. Only a strong heart can take things like eavesdropping on disciples' thoughts and then being misunderstood by them as being very knowledgeable for granted. She swallowed. Be careful and pray in your heart that pornographic texts will not appear again. Then she turned to the 5th page of the secret scroll. He pretended to read very seriously, then pricked up his ears and eavesdropped on his disciple's thoughts. It seems that Winterspring really got the wrong page when it was sorted out. This page seems to contain a forbidden magic formula, forbidden spell. Nanako's whole body trembled suddenly. Frozen Purgatory, after being released, it can freeze everything within 10 kilometers, and drop countless ice blades, indiscriminately killing targets within the range? Hee. So why is such rubbish magic recorded? I've told them so many times. Just throw away all the useless magic I created, don't save even my spit. If such ordinary magic spreads out, it will embarrass me. Nanako, Omega. Shame. Low level. You created it. Chapter 15. Nanako was shocked instantly. Because she had heard of the forbidden spell of Frozen Purgatory a long time ago. She is an ice-type city-breaking magician, and in order to break through to the next level, the minimum requirement is to be able to release a forbidden spell. The forbidden spell of Frozen Purgatory is the top forbidden spell that is coveted by countless ice mages and was even once called the ultimate method of ice mages. And what's even more terrifying is, the method of the Frozen Purgatory circulating outside is still incomplete. But even so, the method of Frozen Purgatory is still only mastered by the most powerful wizards. Unless you have a special encounter, it is impossible to access it. What she didn't expect was that she actually found the magic formula of Frozen Purgatory in this ancient elf secret scroll. What she didn't expect was that her disciple actually said that he was the creator of the Frozen Purgatory. What she didn't expect was, my disciple actually said this top forbidden spell is rubbish. Nanako was stunned. Alas, I am speechless. But it seems that this magic is very popular among ice mages like Master in this era. It is indeed a dilapidated era. People treat trash as treasure. In the past, battles that could easily span millions of miles were no match for this small forbidden spell. Who doesn't have to be a magical index level or a god demotion when they first attack? Nanako. Lin En shook her head, no longer paying attention, and silently flipped through her romance novel. Magical index. God demotion? Nanako only felt her brain buzzing, everything inside was blank, and her whole body was in a daze. She was not unfamiliar with these 2 words. But it was too far away from her. Because the magical index level is the top level magic that can only be used by demigods. As for the demotion of gods, it is a top level method that can only be used by those second only to gods or gods. Nanako stared and grabbed her ponytail. Is it because of the different levels? Is it true that only magic of that level can catch his eye? Is Go-Tour so awesome? Etc. Seeing that Lin En had completely lost interest and turned his eyes away from the secret scroll in her hand, Nanako instantly became anxious. Don't move away yet, at least take another look. Mentally recite the magic formula above to your master. You don't look down on. But your master likes it and wants it very much. On the second day, the round table meeting of the 7 deacons was held as scheduled. Andrew, dressed in a grey wizard robe, sat at the first seat with a dark look in his eyes. On the table in front of him was a thick stack of parchment covered with densely written ancient elven characters. On the left and right sides, the other 5 deacons had already taken their positions. Looking at the empty seat opposite, Andrew looked at the rising sun again and said in a low voice, "Where's Nanako?" The deacons around shook their heads with mocking smiles in their eyes. Maybe she overslept. After all, being late is a common occurrence for her. No, I think he probably said something big yesterday and felt too embarrassed to face people today, so he ran away overnight, right? That makes sense. That makes sense. Listening to everyone's discussions, Andrew's eyes became even gloomier. If we go by seniority, there is no way Nanako would be able to take the position of the 7th butler. It's just that since the founding of Winter Spring Valley, the positions of the 7 deacons have been controlled by the 7 oldest magic families. Nanako, as the only bloodline of the Tulip family, took over the position of the 7th deacon from her deceased father. Andrew took a deep breath. In fact, he didn't expect Nanako to give him a satisfactory answer. Because of his understanding of Nanako, she probably had forgotten about the secret scroll of the elves a long time ago. Even if she hadn't forgotten, it would be absolutely impossible for her to decipher the entire secret scroll within 3 months with her knowledge. Andrew shook his head and said in a low voice, "No need to wait for her, let's start." But before he could finish his words, Nanako's voice suddenly came from outside the door. "Wait a minute. I'm coming." Clang. I saw a loli with twin ponytails rushing into the door and then, under the gaze of everyone, she rushed in breathlessly with her eyes wide open and a thick stack of secret scrolls in her arms. With a snap, he placed the secret scroll in his arms on the table. Nanako stared with her eyes wide open, quickly came to Andrew, bowed 90 degrees, and hit Andrew's forehead with her ponytail. "Sorry, Grandpa Andrew, I'm late." "Oh my god." Andrew clenched his fists and pulled her ponytail away from her face with trembling hands. "Intentional, this guy definitely did it on purpose. You also know that you are late? This is the nth time you have been late in this month." Andrew slammed the table heavily, extremely furious. If it weren't for her father who entrusted her to him in the hope of training her to be a qualified deacon, he wouldn't be so angry. Nanako stood up straight, clasped her hands together, stared, and said, "Grandpa Andrew, I'm so sorry." This time, Nanako stayed up very late in order to crack the elf scroll. It's completely different from the previous times. Hearing this, Andrew laughed out of anger. "Crack the secret scroll? What a crack the secret scroll! Then I want to see what you cracked after staying up all night." The deacons around him tried hard to hold back their laughter, their eyes showing gloating. They knew very well how difficult it was to decipher the secret scroll. It is impossible to understand this kind of ancient elven writing without a large amount of literature for reference and comparison. But they don't have to worry now. Because they didn't tell Nanako. Just last night, Deacon Andrew received the news that their archaeological team far away in the Western Empire had excavated a torn dictionary of ancient elves from the ruins. Deacon Andrew used magic to teleport the dictionary back overnight. With this dictionary, the efficiency of deciphering the ancient elves' secret scrolls immediately increased to a higher level. They looked at Nanako mockingly, waiting for her to make a fool of herself. Nanako returned to her seat, took a deep breath, and rubbed the dark circles under her eyes. Finally, it's done. It took almost a whole day. She finally used various indirect methods, inducements, and deceptions, and finally managed to grasp the general content of her secret scroll from her disciples' thoughts. "It's not easy. It's really not easy." Andrew said coldly, "What are you still standing there for? Why don't you start quickly?" Chapter 16. Nanako swallowed, stared, and nodded repeatedly. She quickly unfolded the secret scroll in her hand and divided the different pages into 3 categories. "No matter what, let's deal with the current situation first." She pointed to the 3 piles of secret scrolls on the table, cleared her throat, and said, "Grandpa Andrew, after Nanako's sorting yesterday, I found that the secret scroll in Nanako's hand must have been on the wrong page when it was unearthed. This secret scroll should contain the contents of 3 different books. The first volume is a historical book about the ancient elves before they were exterminated. The second volume records the formulas of some high-level magic of the ancient elves. The third volume is a not very good ancient elf novel." As soon as these words came out, the deacons around looked at each other in bewilderment. But Andrew frowned, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. The ancient elf scrolls he distributed to the deacons were actually reprints. He kept all the scrolls he had discovered. He had naturally also read the scroll in Nanako's hand. But it was only yesterday when he was referring to the dictionary that he discovered the misprints in these documents. But how did she know? If it was through paper and handwriting, it would be impossible because what she was holding in her hand was a copied reprint. Go on. Andrew looked at Nanako hesitantly. Nanako let out a sigh of relief, then picked up the first volume of the secret scroll and recalled her disciple's thoughts. Disciple. I'm sorry. Let the master borrow a little of your knowledge to show off. Master promises that when he returns, he will give you 2 days off and make you my favorite little cake. Nanako swallowed and, feeling extremely guilty, repeated exactly what she had heard from her disciple. In the year 2021 of the Elven era, the Elf King issued an order to all the Elven warriors on the Violet Continent and asked them to gather in the royal court, ready to respond to the order of the great first king of Violet and fight against the gods. Nanako spoke slowly. The clear and crisp lowly voice tells a magnificent and extremely tragic elegy. All the butlers around were stunned and looked at Nanako in amazement as she kept talking. But Andrew became more and more frightened the more he listened. He was a little nonchalant at first, but after listening to the first page, he couldn't sit still any longer. He quickly opened the dictionary on the table in front of him. With rapid breathing, he took out the original copy of the secret scroll in Nanako's hand that he had deciphered yesterday and compared it carefully. This. He was stunned for a moment. Because, the above content is the same as what Nanako read. Exactly. But how is this possible? Because he was sure that with Nanako's personality, she definitely didn't study the contents of the secret scroll carefully in the first 3 months. And even if she really studied it seriously, without a large amount of literature to refer to, there is absolutely no way she could have cracked it. He looked at Nanako in astonishment, and the way he looked at her immediately changed. Soon. Finished reading the first volume of history. Nanako let out a sigh of relief, then picked up the second secret scroll which contained various magical formulas. She recalled her disciple's thoughts. Then he said seriously, "This is all the history of the first volume I have. The content of this volume is the magic knowledge of the ancient elves, which records all the magic formulas of the forbidden spell Ice Purgatory. In addition, there are some high-level ancient elf magics, and I have roughly translated them." As soon as these words were spoken, the deacons around him instantly showed expressions of extreme shock. Andrew was even more stunned. Magic formula. Forbidden spell level. What a joke. Everyone was shocked instantly. Nanako guiltily took out her small blackboard and recalled the description of the formula in her disciple's mind yesterday. Holding a piece of chalk, he carefully wrote down the magic formula of the forbidden spell Frozen Hell on the blackboard. Period. Also comes with many annotations. Looking at the extremely complicated magic formula that was slowly taking shape in Nanako's hands on the blackboard, Andrew's expression became more and more shocked. The formula had obviously been translated, and Andrew saw the power of this magic almost at first glance. Forbidden spell. It really is a forbidden spell. Moreover, it is the top forbidden spell that ice mages desire most, Ice Inferno. He was breathing rapidly. Because he was 100% sure that Nanako had absolutely no way of accessing this kind of top-level magic. Because he was the one who taught her magic. In other words, Nanako really cracked the secret scroll of the ancient elves. This was a big shock. He stared blankly at the magic formulas and notes that Nanako had carved out bit by bit on the small blackboard. My mind went blank. Could it be that Nanako really only took a short time to come up with this without any references? Cracked the entire magic scroll. And just after the magic formula was basically completed, he saw Nanako wrote this line of words below. The last one among forbidden spells, the best among garbage, the most useless kindergarten magic. Lin. For a moment, Nanako was stunned. Then his face turned red. He wiped away the last sentence with his sleeve at an unimaginable speed. Thinking too much. As a result, I accidentally wrote down my disciple's evaluation of this magic. I can't let Grandpa Andrew and the others see this kind of talk. It would be the end of me. But that line of words was still captured by Andrew and his group. Andrew was stunned and asked, "What did you write last?" Nanako was shocked, stared, shook her head like a rattle, and said, Nothing, just a brief comment on this magic from an ancient being." Andrew lowered his head dully. Then he turned to the last page of the secret scroll which contained the magic formula. Really? At the bottom of the original formula, there is indeed a short line of comments. He immediately looked up the dictionary and translated it carefully. Finally he spelled out the words that Nanako didn't write. Lin En. Lord Violet. Your Majesty the Great Father. In an instant, the whole audience was silent. Nanako's eyes widened and her heart was beating wildly. Damn it! Grandpa Andrew actually translated it. No way! No way! Is it possible that the fact that his disciple is Lord Violet is going to be exposed? For a long time, Andrew took a deep breath and said complicatedly, as expected of a king from ancient times, such exquisite magic can only be compared to garbage in his eyes. That existence is indeed beyond our imagination. No. No doubts? Nanako said dully, Grandpa Andrew, do you know this Lord Violet? Andrew nodded and said, I have studied many books about the history of thousands of years ago. At that time, our Violet continent was ruled by 7 powerful kings, and the first Lord of Violet was far superior to the other 6 kings. At that time, he also had a special title. Nanako was surprised and asked, what's the title? Andrew said seriously, King of Kings. Nanako, Omega Omega. Chapter 17. WTF TF TF TF. What a domineering and cool name. Was my disciple so awesome at that time? Andrew frowned and sighed, but royal power is not eternal. After the God War 1,000 years ago, the Violet continent was reshuffled, and the 7 kings died in battle one after another. Even the great First Lord of Violet disappeared in the long river of history, which is a pity. Nanako was stunned. No. He didn't disappear. He's hiding in our Winter-Spring Valley. He is still occupying Nanako's warm bed and sleeping in. After calming down, Andrew raised his head, looked at Nanako, and said with relief, Nanako, I can tell you now that there is nothing wrong with your translation. This historical record of the ancient elves has successfully filled in some of the missing parts of history for us. Nanako, you are indeed an amazing magician, able to decipher the ancient elves' writing in such a short time. Nanako suddenly came back to her senses, her eyes rolled around, she laughed, and rubbed the back of her head guiltily. Thank you for the compliment, Grandpa, ha ha ha, ha ha. Smiling awkwardly and guiltily. Really? I feel guilty. Nanako felt extremely embarrassed whenever she thought about the fact that all the deciphered contents were secretly heard from her disciple's thoughts. My disciple is really mysterious. Who would have thought that the guy who is lazy and sloppy on weekdays would be a hidden super boss? It's just. Andrew raised his head, stared at Nanako, and said in a low voice, I'm very curious, how did you manage to decipher the entire ancient elf secret scroll accurately without a large amount of documents being discovered for reference? As soon as these words were spoken, Nanako's expression suddenly froze. Yes. How did you crack it? Could he still tell Grandpa Andrew that he had secretly heard it from his disciple's inner thoughts? I'm afraid no one will believe this if I say it. She dodged his gaze, continued to laugh, and said, this, that, how about Grandpa Andrew, can you guess? It was quiet all around. Nanako's hair drooped down and she whispered, Nanako saw this from a mysterious and ancient magician when she was out on a mission half a month ago. He was very knowledgeable and had many books of ancient knowledge in his hands. Because it happened to contain records of ancient elven writing, Nanako secretly plagiarized some of it. Nanako's face was so red that it seemed like blood was about to bleed. But it's roughly correct, right? The disciple is indeed a mysterious and ancient magician, and he is very knowledgeable. I did hear it secretly from my disciple's inner voice. So, it's not really a lie, right? Andrew heard this and fell into deep thought. A mysterious and ancient magician? A book with ancient elven writing in his hands? He was 80% certain that Nanako was lying. If he wanted to expose it. With just a little guidance and asking her to describe the details of what happened, she will soon reveal her true colors. But Andrew didn't do that. Everyone has secrets in their hearts. Since Nanako didn't want to say it, he naturally wouldn't force her. He took a deep breath, his eyes fell on the 2 words Lin En on the paper, and joked, I see. But compared to what you just said, I believe in another speculation more. Isn't your disciple also called Lin En? Lord Violet also happens to be called this name. Could it be that the missing Lord Violet is your disciple? Andrew joked. In an instant, Nanako was frightened to the point of exploding. Odo. It really is. I doubt it too. Grandpa Andrew, this is the closest you have ever been to the truth. Looking at Nanako's dazed look, Andrew laughed, tapped the table lightly, and said, "Just kidding, Nanako, you did a great job. Remember to keep striving for perfection in the future. Don't be so sloppy all the time. The position of butler is not easy to get." Nanako was frightened and broke out in a cold sweat, but she managed to deal with it by laughing it off. Of course, Andrew was just joking and teasing Nanako at the same time. How could her stupid disciple be Lord Violet? He didn't even think about that. Because the name Lin En is very common in the Violet continent, many parents like to name their children after historical celebrities in order to make their children successful. I heard that this can make you look more noble. Andrew shook his head, and then his eyes fell on the third pile of secret scrolls in front of Nanako, and smiled. "Go on, and read the rest of the third volume to everyone. To be included in the ancient elf secret scroll, the information inside must be very valuable." In an instant, Nanako froze in place. "Volume, the third volume? Treasure, precious. Isn't that the ancient elf erotic novel that my disciple was so excited about reading?" "This?" Nanako said awkwardly, "Do you really want to read it?" Andrew smiled and said, "Don't be nervous, just read it." Now that the translation is complete, everyone naturally wants to know the content. Everyone nodded. Nanako lowered her head, picked up the third secret scroll with great embarrassment, and said, Okay, I'll read it then." Her face flushed and she lowered her head to read the contents. Her face was flushed, her delicate red lips gently opened and closed, and her slender hands gently stroked the protagonist's muscular chest muscles, and then moved all the way down. In an instant, there was silence all around. You can hear a pin drop. A few hours later, returning from the Parliament chamber, Nanako was jumping around, holding a big gift box in her hands, humming an unknown tune, her two ponytails swinging up and down. There was still a slight blush on her face. In front of Grandpa Andrew and many deacons, reciting pornographic texts in public. I almost died from social problems. But he managed to use his disciples' thoughts and fool them. Anyway, no matter how to say it, my disciple has helped a lot this time. Although he doesn't know it, it doesn't stop me from giving him a gift. I hope my disciple likes it," she said blushing. This was a gift she prepared for her apprentice by going to the magician's shop and using the pocket money from her own piggy bank. Holding the big gift box, Nanako hummed and jumped back to her wizard tower. But as soon as he returned to the outside of the mage tower, she was puzzled to see that the door of the mage tower was closed and there was no sign of her disciple. "Where is my disciple?" She tilted her head. Then he walked to the door of the mage tower puzzled and was about to push it open. But at this moment, she suddenly heard a girl's voice coming from inside. "Go in. Brother Lin En." Chapter 18. It's okay, don't scream so loudly, take a deep breath, and remember to go down slowly, don't use too much force. "Well, I will try my best, Brother Lin En, that. I don't dare to look. I told you not to move." "Oh. I'm sorry, Brother Lin En, this is my first time and I have no experience." "Okay, but don't move. What's your name?" "It's coming." Brother Lin En. Nanako, with her ear pressed against the door, stared with her eyes wide open, and her face instantly turned red like a cooked shrimp. Nanako was so embarrassed that she felt like she was about to burst. "This damn guy! This LSP!" Nanako pulled her ponytail and went crazy in an instant. This evil dog disciple actually took advantage of my absence to do this kind of thing in the mage tower. The disgusting scenes one after another instantly emerged in her mind. Click! Nanako gritted her teeth and clenched her fists tightly, with white steam constantly evaporating from her head. "You actually did such a shameful thing with other girls in my wizard tower. This is simply unforgivable." She glanced at the gift she had carefully prepared for her disciple. "Gifts or something. I won't give it to this abominable guy. The master is obviously a super beautiful woman, but he dared to do such shameful things with other girls behind the master's back. She wants to catch an adulterer. She wants to catch an adulterer." Without saying a word, Nanako kicked open the door of the mage tower. Her face flushed red as she pointed inside with gritted teeth and shouted, "Stop right now! Have you asked for my opinion before doing such a dirty thing in my magic tower?" Inside the mage tower, Lin En sat on the bench, rolled up his sleeves, holding a translucent syringe in his hand, staring blankly at Nanako, who suddenly broke in through the door. Next to Lin En stood a neatly dressed little girl who looked like a pastor. She was holding a jar full of medicine in her hand, and she turned her head in confusion, looking towards the direction of the door. Nanako stood there in a daze, still maintaining that aggressive look. However, the obscene and erotic image that had just appeared in my mind did not appear. "Master, you're back?" Lin En asked in confusion. Nanako was confused and asked, "What are you doing?" The pastor recognized Nanako and bowed quickly. She was obviously a little scared and said weakly, "Deacon Nanako, I'm a new intern priest in Winterspring. I'm here to check up Big Brother Lin En and bring some herbs." Nanako said blankly, "What is that?" Lin En looked at the syringe in his hand. Before Lin En could speak, the pastor's eyes lit up and said, "It was Brother Lin En who invented the syringe. Many medicines have very poor effects if taken orally, so Brother Lin En came up with the idea of injection. This small piece of equipment is really a big help. It's just because I just started, and I'm not very experienced yet, so I can't find the right position." She lowered her head in shame. Nanako said dully, "Is it just that simple?" Lin En tilted his head and said, "What else?" "Master, you are not thinking wrongly, are you?" Nanako's eyes widened instantly, her face turned red, and white steam came out of her head. How is this possible? Giving injections and the like, it's not like I haven't seen it before." Lin En asked in confusion, "But I just made this syringe a few days ago." There is a problem, the master is very suspicious. Could it be that he was eavesdropping outside the door? It's very possible. This is indeed something that a lowly master would do, but why is his face so red? Is it because I think of some scenes that are not suitable for children? No way. Is the lowly master so impure? Then he rushed in aggressively just now, could he be here to catch someone having an affair? Nanako choked suddenly. If there was a crack in the ground, she would really want to crawl into it immediately. Seen through. Damn it. Can my disciple also hear my thoughts? No. This kind of thing cannot be admitted. Nanako is still very pure and has never had a boyfriend. If her apprentice saw through her, her dignified image would immediately collapse. Nanako shook her head vigorously, stared, and gritted her teeth. "Don't speculate on your master, my dog disciple. Have you finished the injection?" The pastor stood straight and said stiffly, "No. No." Then, under Lin En's confused gaze, Nanako rushed in aggressively with her eyes wide open and her ponytail pulled. Then he snatched the syringe from his hand. What is this little dog Lolita going to do? What is she going to do? What is she going to do? Puff. Lin En, Omega Omega. Miss Pastor. Stop hesitating. Nanako gritted her teeth and forcefully pushed the liquid in the syringe toward Lin En's arm, saying, "Isn't this fight over in a moment? You have to chat with the little girl about family matters. It's so abominable that it will cause misunderstandings." Half an hour later. Moon over Lanchange. Accompanied by the flashing of the teleportation array, Lin En and Nanako, two figures, one big and one small, appeared outside the city. Nanako was wearing a brand new blue robe and a big wizard's hat on her head. Her petite body was holding a completely disproportionate, thick and strong staff. Although he did not have a trace of dignity, he held his head high and chest puffed out, trying to show his temperament as a great wizard. No way. No way. The blue-haired girl actually wants to treat me to a meal and take me to a flower show. Is it because she has changed her personality? Hasn't Master Loli always been very stingy? Could it be that he has taken a fancy to me? He wants to have a sad teacher-student romance with me? Well, it's possible, after all, I'm so handsome. So, is this a date? No, if someone sees us, we'll be treated as the evil Lolita complex and executed. Lolita. Lolita control? Do you feel ashamed to be considered a Lolita? Angry face, Nanako's small eyebrows began to twitch wildly and uncontrollably. She turned her head, revealing her sapphire eyes from under her hat brim, and said, "It's just to celebrate your success in becoming a second-level mage, so I decided to take you to relax. Don't think too much." Lin En was immediately touched and said, "Thank you, Master. You are so kind to me." "I see. I feel bored all of a sudden. I thought this was some kind of erotic date. It's boring, I'm leaving now." I will go back and find the pastor's sister to treat my physical and mental health and do some healthcare. Nanako. Chapter 19. Without saying a word, Nanako grabbed Lin En's sleeve. He was too short to grab his ears, and angrily dragged him into the castle. Hey, master, slow down, I can walk by myself. Although Go-Tour is indeed a hidden super boss. But this kind of bad character really doesn't make people feel awe at all. Moreover, even though he already has a handsome and beautiful master, he still wants to find a cute pastor's sister outside. This kind of thing is simply unforgivable. Drag it all the way into Uirlan City. This is a very famous city on the Violet Continent. Because every time the moon is full, many beautiful moon orchids bloom outside the city, so over time people named the city after this flower. More importantly, this was once the capital of Lord Violet. As soon as they stepped into the city gate, Lin En and Nanako attracted the attention of most people on the street. Wow! Look, those two seem to be mages from Winterspring. Well, that girl is so cute, and that older brother is so handsome, are they boyfriend and girlfriend? Old man and young wife, what a love story! Could it be that the older brother is a Lolita lover? Wow, you're so young, is that really possible? It seemed that the discussions around me were about to develop in a strange direction. Nanako coughed awkwardly, pressed the brim of her hat to cover her eyes, and tried not to be affected by the strange discussions around her. And instantly, Lin En's voice came from behind. Tisk tisk, I haven't been here for almost 1,000 years, and the people here are still as open-minded as they were back then. Alas, I am so helpless. I am still considered a Lolita. Even though I am a 100-year-old Lolita, I am still a Lolita after all. Nanako, grinding teeth, this dog apprentice's mental activities are too frequent, and he keeps thinking in that dirty direction. It's really hateful. What is most infuriating is that although psychological activities are so frequent, but the guy still maintained a faint, polite smile on his face, like a gentleman, which made the girls scream one by one. This is the most infuriating thing. Nanako glanced at Lin En behind her. Came here today. The main purpose is of course to relax. My disciple has helped me a lot, so I must express my gratitude to him no matter what. The second purpose. Of course, I brought my apprentice to the former capital of Lord Violet and took this opportunity to get a good feel for him. Maybe I can dig out some more mysterious things about my disciple. Carrying a secret that cannot be told. Nanako brought Lin En all the way to the bustling streets of Uirlan City. Today is the annual Camellia Festival in Uirlan City. The streets are crowded with people, including wandering businessmen from various cities and young men and women who come here to admire the festival. It is a very lively scene. If you're passing by, come and have a look. Here we have the best furs from the northern snowfields. The price is fair and we don't cheat anyone. Earrings, umbrellas, rings, purses, amulets. There are some very nice girls here, they are very soft and flexible. Handsome guy, do you want to come in and spend some money? Various hawking sounds can be heard everywhere. Nanako, who originally wanted to listen to Lin En's thoughts, was immediately attracted by the dazzling merchandise. As for eavesdropping on his disciple's thoughts, he forgot about it in an instant. Although she is a 100-year-old little loli, once the desire to go shopping is aroused, it is still very scary. My disciple, do you think that brooch is pretty? Does it suit me, your master? Wow! The clothes here are really well made. I love them. That one. And this one. I want all of them except those. Being dragged around everywhere by the lowly master. Lin En suddenly felt like she was walking her dog. If you wear a collar around your neck, pull another rope yourself. That's even more like it. Indeed, there is a slight feeling like that. But I shouldn't say walking the dog. This is too disrespectful to the master. I should say walking the lowly. Running around with its owner, looking left and right, sniffing, wagging its tail excitedly, etc. Lin En's eyes were fixed on the aho hair on the lowly master's head that kept shaking with excitement. The person who is shaking has an urge to grasp it. Image, an exceptional image. Snap. Nanako stepped on his foot, closed her eyes, and clenched her fists. Lin En took a deep breath, rubbed his feet in pain, and said, Master, why did you step on me? Nanako closed her eyes and said, Nothing, I just wanted to step on it. Just think of your master as being bored. Humph. Lin En. No way. Is this lowly so sensitive? Did she guess that I was saying bad things about her in my heart? Is this a woman's sixth sense? Horror. Horror. No. It's better to try it out a little bit. Then Lin En stared at Nanako's back and tried to probe in his mind, 100 years old lowly. Cluck. Nanako clenched her fists and gritted her teeth wildly. But because his back was facing away from Lin En didn't see it. Master, your fat is exposed. Nanako, hold on, hold on. Master, your breasts are not as big as mine. Nanako, damn it. I can't stand it. Looking at Nanako's indifferent back, Lin En's hesitant look finally relaxed. He breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, I was overthinking it. It was just menopause. After all, how could he possibly hear what I was thinking? After all, if Master Loli had heard what I just said, she would have been furious. Ha 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 hiccup. Lin En is laughing silently with his back to her. Nanako gritted her teeth, picked up the lace panties sold at the stall in front of her, and tore the thread with her teeth. Damn it! Damn it! How dare he test his beloved master? And he said so many hateful things in his heart. Bite you to death! Bite you and me to death! The stall owner was stunned when he saw Nanako tearing her panties with her teeth. This. He wanted to stop it several times but didn't dare. He really wanted to tell this girl that panties are for wearing, not for biting. He swallowed his saliva, looked at Lin En behind her in astonishment, and said tremblingly, Hey young man, hurry up and come over here to stop your daughter. I am doing a legitimate business. If your daughter keeps chewing, my stall will soon be unleashed. Chapter 20. A few minutes later, Lin En looked at the wrinkled lace panties that were stained with saliva and that she had bought for 2 silver coins. Then he turned his head and looked at Nanako, whose face was already red, but who still held her head high and forced herself to maintain the dignity of a master. Lin En said strangely, Master, if you like it, just buy it, there is no need to bite it with your teeth on the street, it's embarrassing. A white mist rose from Nanako's head. Nanako gritted her teeth and said, No. No. It's obviously. Lin En shook his head and said seriously and firmly, It's okay, Master. Everyone has some special habits. Master, don't be embarrassed. You like to chew fat, and I will never tell anyone about it. Lin En showed an angry expression as if he was willing to die to help his master keep the secret. Nanako was about to cry. Damn it. There is really no way to explain it clearly. Nanako, who had already beaten Lin En 100 times in her mind, continued to wander around angrily with her dog apprentice. But at this moment, a loud shout suddenly came from the direction of the city gate. The Silver Knights have arrived, all outsiders please leave immediately. And that is the next moment. Along with the sounds of panicked dodging on the street, bursts of horse hoof sounds suddenly came from the direction of the city gate. The next moment, from the direction of the city gate, row after row of knights riding white war horses and wearing full armor rushed in aggressively. Leading the group was a middle-aged knight with grey hair and an exceptionally strong build. He had a serious expression, a stern look in his eyes, and a terrifying aura emanating from his entire body. Is it the Grand Master of the Silver Hand Riders, the legendary Sky Knight? What is going on? Why did the Silver Hand Knights come to Ireland City? Aren't they always fighting monsters from the abyss in the south? Get out of the way. Do you want to die? The knights are not someone we can mess with. On the street, one after another, civilians who were visiting the flower show dodged in panic. I don't know if it was something urgent, but the knights didn't slow down at all and ran towards the castle in the center with serious faces. Nanako frowned, looked at the knights with dissatisfaction, and said, Damn it! These lousy knights have no manners at all. Don't they know that riding is not allowed in the city? I'm a deacon of Winterspring and I'm not that high profile. Why are these lousy knights so arrogant? Nanako was very angry. This was the kind of behavior she hated the most in her life. That's because the master is a Lolita, without any dignity. Even if she rides a horse, the horse won't run. Besides, they are nobles, so it's okay for them to be a little arrogant. If they have the ability but are not arrogant, what's the point of living? Of course, I am capable but not arrogant because of a special reason. The sudden voice of her disciple beside her made Nanako furious instantly. But she didn't have time to lose her temper. Haha, although I am a very arrogant person, what I hate most is that others are more arrogant than me in front of me. I'll trip him up. Arnold, the Grand Commander of the Silver Hand, was riding on his warhorse and was thinking about the urgent news he had just received from the Grand Archon of Uerlan City. This is the heartland of the Xiu Empire. However, judging from the news we just received, there has been a very obvious fluctuation in the activities coming from the abyss nearby. This is not a good thing. Although there are magic circles set up by magicians in Winterspring Valley and other places over most of the Violet Continent. However, many weak points can still be easily breached by those powerful abyss demons. And once the abyss demon breaks through the space and breaks into the real world, this will be sad news for everyone here. He was thinking deeply. But at this moment, his expression suddenly changed. In an instant, for some unknown reason, he suddenly felt an indescribable, extremely terrifying aura that instantly enveloped him. It was as if for a moment he was glanced at by the gods above. The terrifying throbbing almost caused his heart to stop. The black warhorse under him was also frightened in an instant, and let out a long, terrified howl. Its legs went limp and it fell directly to its knees on the ground. Arnold even leaned forward. Fell heavily to the ground. Face down. In an instant, all the knights behind were shocked. Captain Arnold! All the knights hurriedly tightened the reins, rushed down in great shock, and rushed over quickly to help Arnold up. My lord, are you okay? Should we call a priest? Oh no! The adult is suffocating. What on earth is going on? Why is the adult suffocating? Quick! Give the adult artificial respiration! A knight yelled. Looking at Captain Arnold with a dull look in his eyes, the knights were extremely anxious. As soon as they took off their peepholes, several burly men immediately surrounded them. Get out of the way! I have a big lung capacity, I can do it. Let me do the artificial respiration. A burly knight roared. He pushed away the knights around him. Then he took a deep breath. Pout! Juju! A series of inexplicable sounds that make people blush and their hearts beat faster. Arnold, who was almost suffering from cardiac arrest, was immediately awakened by the strong smell of breath, which seemed like he hadn't brushed his teeth for hundreds of days. Seeing Arnold slowly recovering, the knights around him immediately showed expressions of surprise. My lord! Are you awake? Arnold moved his lips dully. His face suddenly turned pale and blue, then he turned his head and retched out a pool of gastric juice. He panted and said, No. I'm fine. I don't know what happened just now. I suddenly felt a chill on my back. It felt like a god looked at me. I almost had a heart attack. When these words were spoken, all the knights around were shocked. Not only the knights, but also the civilians around them all showed stunned expressions. Being looked at by a god. How is this possible? It has been 1,000 years since the gods have descended upon the earth. But looking at Captain Arnold, who was sweating profusely and seemed exhausted, it didn't seem like he was joking. Nanako glanced at Lin En strangely. But I found that he, like everyone else, also had a look of astonishment on his face, and his disguise was so thorough and natural. If it were someone else, they would definitely not be able to tell. Arnold stood up with great difficulty under the help of the knights, but his legs were still trembling and he could hardly stand steadily. No. He gritted his teeth and said angrily, My legs are too weak. I need someone to carry me back. Then, everyone stared blankly. The powerful leader of the Knights of the Silver Hand was carried up by several knights with great difficulty, and they ran all the way to the city lord's palace in the center of the city. Same. Because the warhorse under him was also trembling and weak. After a discussion, the knights gritted their teeth, put the warhorse on their backs and carried it back. Then, under the gaze of everyone, a man and a horse were carried on someone's back and rode away with a clatter. The scene was extremely strange. But it was not long after they left. Suddenly, a loud shout came from the guards on the city wall. Quick! Remove the anti-aircraft shield immediately. The Griffin Knights are coming soon. Chapter 21. At that very moment, all the civilians in the city were shocked to see that the city protecting magic circle that had been floating above their heads gradually dimmed and then dispelled. And that was the next moment. Suddenly, long beeps were heard from the distant sky. In the distance, a formation of at least hundreds of griffins was seen quickly crossing the city wall, rushing into Uerlan City and heading towards the castle in the center. All the civilians showed shocked expressions on their faces. Look, that seems to be Sky Knight Howard. Oh my god! What on earth happened in our Uerlan City? The top 2 knight groups in Zeo Kingdom are all here. On the huge griffin at the head was riding a handsome man with blonde hair and blue eyes, holding a spear. His expression was cold and he exuded a sharp aura. And behind him, the groups of griffin riders were even more majestic and murderous. Obviously, this is definitely an iron army that often goes in and out of battlefields. The strong wind caused by the griffin's flight blew the people on the street into large groups like wheat being cut. Everyone was in a panic, finding it difficult to stand still, and they grabbed anything they could around them to try to steady themselves. So strong! So strong! This is the first time I've seen this legendary creature. It's a griffin. A griffin! Lin En also shouted, awesome! Awesome! This way of showing off while riding a griffin is so cool. Moment. I don't know what happened. Above the sky, the huge griffin leading the group suddenly shook, as if someone had pressed the pause button, and it froze in mid-air. And everyone was even more shocked to see. Sky Knight Howard, who was riding on the griffin, also trembled. And that was the next moment. The huge griffin instantly fell from the sky in free fall, like a plane that had run out of fuel. Boom! There was a loud bang. All the people in the audience fell silent. Captain! All the griffin knights were shocked. And Sky Knight Howard and his griffin fell exactly on the spot where Arnold had just fallen. A big hole was smashed into the ground. In the pit, Howard and his griffin were stacked together, mosquito coils kept spinning in their eyes, and their bodies were twitching. The whole audience was silent. You must be kidding. Everyone around, Omega Omega, up. Is this place cursed? It's been less than 10 minutes and 2 top knights have fallen. This is not scientific. This is not scientific. Just when they had not yet recovered from the shock of the griffin rider's fall, loud shouts from the soldiers guarding the city gate were heard again in the distance. Open the city gates. Get ready to welcome the Raptor Knights. In the distance, people watched in shock. A group of strong knights riding velociraptors were rushing towards this place in a hurry. The people around were all shocked. Don't come over here. Quick! Tell those knights not to get close. He's going to fall. He's going to fall right here. People were screaming like crazy. Bang! There was a loud bang. Then, as the crowd stared blankly, the velociraptor under the leading knight's mount's legs softened and leaned forward. The knight slid for dozens of meters and bumped into Howard, who had just woken up and was about to climb out of the pit. Boom! A cloud of dust rose up from the big pit. The whole audience fell silent for a moment. At the same time, in the castle in the center of Uairlan City, Vivian, the first princess of Uairlan City, sat on the throne, staring blankly at Arnold, the leader of the Silver Knights, who was carried in by the knights. The grey-haired knight had weak legs, sweat all over his forehead, and was gritting his teeth. He was not as majestic as she remembered. Princess Vivian immediately stood up and said in astonishment, "Uncle Arnold, what's wrong with you? Why do you look so haggard?" Arnold sat down on the chair with difficulty, wiped the cold sweat from his head, and said, "Vivian, I know you are a good girl, but please tell your uncle the truth. Have you won over a powerful person at the level of a god of magic? Are you trying to show your uncle a warning this time?" After these words came out, Vivian was suddenly confused. A powerful god of magic? A show of force? What the hell is going on? If she really has the ability to win over the god of law, then why is she still living in this tiny Uairlan city? She had already conquered the continent and established her own empire. Vivian was confused and said, "Uncle Arnold, why don't I understand what you are saying? What do you mean by a powerful god-level warrior? What's going on?" Arnold took a deep breath, and a hint of palpitations and pain in the balls appeared on his face. He turned his head with a complicated expression, looked in the direction he came from, and said, "Actually, I'm not really sure. When I was entering the city and passing through the downtown area, I suddenly felt as if I was being stared at by some terrifying existence." He shuddered subconsciously and took a deep breath. That terrifying feeling didn't even appear when I faced the dragon. Although it only lasted for less than a second, but... He suddenly bent over and began to retch again and again. This scene frightened Vivian to death. Arnold wiped the corner of his mouth and panted, "My heart stopped for a second, and my body showed signs of imminent death." After hearing this, Vivian was shocked and said, "This? How is this possible?" She was well aware of how powerful Uncle Arnold was. In the knight sequence, the ranking ranges from 1st level knight to 9th level knight, and above the 9th level knight, it is divided into Earth Knight, Sky Knight, City Breaking Knight, King Knight, etc. And Uncle Arnold is a top boss ranked among the Sky Knights. If we really compare them by rank, he is at the same rank as the powerful Grand Mage. And such an existence immediately showed signs of physical death. This. Vivian just felt her mouth dry and couldn't utter a word. Arnold panted and said, the knight's control over the body is second only to the warrior sequence. This feeling cannot be false, and the one who can cause such terrifying suppression to me. I can only think of the god of magic. No. At least a world-class god of magic can make me feel so powerless. Vivian's mind went blank. World-class magic god. She had almost no idea about the existence of this level. According to the classification of the mage sequence, above the 9th level mage, there are magicians, grand magicians, and city-breaking mages. And above the city-breaking mage is the god of magic. And the world-class god of magic is the ceiling of the ranks of gods of magic. Even in Winterspring, there has never been a being of this level. Wei swallowed her saliva and said dully, Uncle, could it be your illusion? I mean, if there really is a being of that level, how could he come to a small town like Uerlin City? After all, Lord Violet has been dead for 1,000 years. Arnold took a deep breath and said, I also hope it's an illusion, but you know, Vivian, a knight's body is very sensitive to the outside world. I can't think of anything else that can make my body feel so scared. And the most important thing is, Vivian said dully, because of what? Arnold closed his eyes, took a deep breath and said, I have diarrhea. There was silence all around for a moment. Chapter 22. Hurry. Someone come quickly. Take Uncle downstairs to change his pants. Vivian screamed. No need. Arnold panted and stretched out his hand to stop him. Such a small matter can be evaporated quickly with my divine power. No trace will be left. Moreover, divine power has a purification effect. Any filth will be purified. Suddenly, the whole hall was filled with a strange fragrance that smelled particularly pleasant. Vivian froze. And the next moment, the guard outside the door reported. The guard stepped forward, stretched out his hand and hit his chest heavily, then knelt on one knee and said, Report to Lady Vivian, the Griffin Knights, the Raptor Knights and others have arrived, and the captains are waiting for you outside the door. Vivian was overjoyed. She immediately said, Quick! Please invite the group leaders in. Vivian was extremely happy, her eyes full of hope. As the only descendant of Lord Violet, after her father's death, Uerlin City has become her foundation. This time, she used all the resources she could to invite many famous knights from the Zeo Kingdom to help her fight against the attack of the Abyss. Because just a week ago, he discovered signs of Abyss Mage's activities near Uerlin City. And a lot of evidence also shows that the monsters from the Abyss are likely to launch an attack on Uerlin City in the near future. As a descendant of the great Lord Violet, she would never allow such a city to be invaded by monsters. Click! The door opens. But the next moment, Vivian, who was full of joy, was stunned. Just see! The well-known mainland group leaders that she had invited with great difficulty were all listless at this moment. They were covered in dust and were carried in one by their subordinates. There was sudden silence all around. Snap, snap, snap. 4 chairs. The 4 group leaders all had empty eyes and were placed on chairs in a listless manner. If you didn't know, you might think they had fought all night and their bodies were just drained. Vivian said sluggishly, what is going on? The knights who carried them in all had bitter expressions and said, I'm sorry, Lord City Lord, several of our team leaders encountered some problems on the way. Please bear with me. Howard, the weak and pale-lipped Griffin Knight, stretched out his hand tremblingly and said weakly, City Lord Vivian, it's unnecessary, it's really unnecessary. We have all received favors from your Violet family, so it is reasonable for us to help you. There is really no need to show off your power. The leader of the Raptor Knights was also dazed and said, Yet. Even if you really want to shock us old guys, there's no need to use the god of magic. It's not unacceptable to talk nicely. There was silence all around for a moment. Vivian's mind went blank. Apparently, I was misunderstood again. The Violet family is indeed the oldest family in the world, but since the death of Lord Violet, her family has long been in decline. Where did she get this magic god? Seeing the 4 listless people, Arnold frowned and said, Everyone. Could it be that you also felt that kind of gaze? As soon as these words came out, the 4 captains were all startled and looked at Arnold in amazement. Could it be that you also? Arnold frowned and said, but it's in the downtown area 500 meters from Chinchua Avenue. The 4 group leaders were shocked and said, that's right. Arnold frowned even more tightly and asked, did you suddenly feel like you were being watched, and suddenly your whole body went cold, your heart stopped, and you felt like you were going to die? The 4 group leaders were shocked and said, yes. Arnold took a deep breath and said seriously, it seems that we are right. We have encountered the same thing. Could it be that you, Senior Arnold, have also fallen there? Howard asked in astonishment. Arnold smiled slightly and said, just one step ahead of you. As expected of Senior Arnold, it's fate, fate. The 4 captains were overjoyed and bowed to greet the senior of their knights. Arnold smiled faintly and said, it's just a coincidence, nothing to talk about, but it's a blessing to have the same experience with 4 legendary captains. The 4 group leaders all echoed and exclaimed, yes. Yes. Then, there was silence all around. They suddenly realized that they had all fallen into the same situation before. It doesn't seem like it's something that makes them so happy. Of course not. Vivian was going crazy. Why did things suddenly develop in a strange direction? It is very strange that 5 legendary Sky Knights fell in the same place. If it wasn't arranged by you, Vivian. Arnold pondered and said, that's very likely. There is a powerful god-level warrior hiding in this city. With his power, I can't imagine what his purpose is. Howard also had a gloomy expression and said, yes, and he is obviously not impressed by our arrival. If this being is planning something, the consequences will be disastrous. Several other group leaders also expressed their concerns. For a while, the surroundings fell silent again. Whenever they thought of the terrifying feeling of being watched they had just felt, they felt a wave of fear. If such a being really wanted to attack you or Lanchinch, even if they joined forces, they would not be able to shake the other party in the slightest. Vivian swallowed her saliva and asked worriedly, dear knights, if that god of magic really exists, what do you think he is doing now? Several people fell silent. But almost all of them had a picture in their minds. A high and illusory existence, standing in the clouds or in another dimension, indifferently overlooking the entire Uerlan city and all the ant-like creatures in the city. In his eyes, everything is so insignificant and everything is dispensable. At the same time, a dessert shop. Nanako sat on the chair, staring at Lin En opposite her. She opened her mouth and swallowed the ice cream he fed her in one gulp. If people nearby saw this scene, they would definitely think it was very harmonious and would think it was a sweet daily life between a handsome young nobleman and his lovely girlfriend. So what is going on? Nanako chewed the ice cream, supporting her cheek with one hand, looking thoughtful. Today is a flower show, and so many Sky Knights have come all at once. Are they going to fight? Nanako glanced at Lin En who was concentrating on feeding him ice cream. It's different now. The taste of the ice cream is obviously different from when I brought the recipe 1,000 years ago. Chemical saccharin, they actually used chemical saccharin, it only tastes like strawberry, but there is no strawberry, they must have used pigments and some unhealthy flavorings. Damn it, I knew that no matter which world it is, there would be such abominable profiteers. If I eat too much of this, I'm afraid I'll get Alzheimer's disease. I definitely won't eat this kind of thing. Lin En picked up a large spoonful of ice cream, handed it to Nanako's mouth again, and opened her mouth and said, Master, ah. Nanako. Chapter 23. Bang! Without saying a word, Nanako closed her eyes and slapped her disciple on the head with her little hand. Damn guy! Since everyone knows that eating too much of this kind of thing will cause Alzheimer's disease, he still keeps feeding it to his master. It's really rotten to the core. Besides, didn't you hear what the master said? Master is talking about those knights right now. With such an indifferent attitude, how can I, your master, eavesdrop on your thoughts openly? Snort. Lin En pushed the ice cream away, picked up a fruit, took a bite, shrugged helplessly and said, Master, how can I know something that you don't know? If Master really wants to know, you can go ask the Lord here in person. Master, you are the steward of Winterspring. No matter where you go, as long as you reveal your identity, even the king will give you face. Nanako nodded, holding her chin with her hand, and thought, that makes sense. However, Nanako had no intention of actually going there. Although she is the deacon of Winterspring. But if they are not invited, Winterspring has a rule that they are not allowed to interfere in the internal affairs of these countries. This is also to maintain Winterspring's transcendent status and prevent itself from being coerced by other forces. Snap! Nanako took out 2 silver coins and said generously, "Boss, please pay the bill. You don't need to change the 2 copper coins." After saying this, his lithe body jumped lightly, left his seat, and skipped out. "My disciple, come with me and follow master around for a walk. It's not worth it to come here so easily and then go back so easily." Lin En shrugged and was about to leave. But he paused, turned around, stared at the boss who came to collect the money with dead eyes, and said, "Give me those 2 copper coins for 2 original flavor cones." The boss was surprised and said, "But the lady said there's no need to look for it." There was a brief silence, accompanied by a crackling sound. 10 seconds later, Lin En came out with 2 ice cream cones without any additives. Nanako asked in confusion, "What was that sound just now?" Lin En licked the cone and said, "The boss was too enthusiastic. He insisted on kowtow to me. I couldn't resist and knocked over the chair." Nanako didn't think much about it and skipped forward. But at this moment, Lin En glanced towards a corner, then nonchalantly looked away and followed his master. "Haha, quite interesting, an abyss warlock, and a great magician at that. It seems that they have noticed the identity of the lowly master and secretly sent people to follow. Sure enough, the appearance of those knights is not without reason. Since there is a warlock of the Grand Mage level in this city, it looks like he is preparing to summon a space gate to let those monsters from the abyss in, hehe." Lin En licked the ice cream cone, thinking absent-mindedly. Nanako, who was walking in front, immediately pricked up her ears. Abyss warlock? Summoning a space gate? Nanako's heart was suddenly shocked. And there's a great wizard-level warlock following him. Without saying a word, Nanako's heart immediately rose to her throat. If she hadn't heard her disciple's voice, she might not have noticed it. After all, the mage is not omnipotent. She is an iceberg and is good at controlling the situation and fighting. Not much is involved with perception. But after getting the hint, Nanako immediately focused her attention and sensed the movements of everyone around her in a way that was imperceptible to others. Did Master Loli notice it too? No way. Logically speaking, with Master Loli's silly personality, she would probably be half beat away even if the enemy was standing right in front of her, right? Amazing. Amazing. It seems that Master is not as stupid as I thought. Lin En was amazed in his heart. Cluck. Nanako closed her eyes and clenched her fists. This damned disciple actually dared to look down on his master like this. How despicable. Nanako grits her teeth. But now is not the time to cause trouble for this hateful disciple. He can be careless, but I can't. Although the deacon of Winterspring Valley cannot intervene at will, if the other party is really doing something that may endanger the people, she will definitely not sit idly by. The next moment, Nanako's mental power captured the trace of the Abyss Sorcerer. I found you. Nanako's hair moved. In the alley, a man dressed in black and wearing a big hood was staring gloomily at Nanako and Lin En on the street. One could vaguely see that his eyes were blood red and his face was covered with dense green lines. His eyes followed Nanako until she disappeared around the corner of the street. That mage didn't do anything unusual. He said in a low voice, Winterspring probably hasn't noticed us yet. If they knew we were going to summon the abyssal blood demon, they would definitely not send just one deacon. A crow slowly landed on his shoulder. The crow's eyes were also blood red, flashing with wisdom and indifference that was completely different from that of a crow. To prevent unnecessary trouble, you continue to monitor. The ritual has reached the final stage. During this time, I will not allow anyone to disrupt my plan. The man in black lowered his hands, his eyes flashing red as he said, Yes, Master, but what about those knights? Do we need to take action? The crow said in a cold voice, Don't worry about them. Once the space gate is opened, they will become the most delicious sacrifice for my lord. By then, the entire city will be reduced to ashes. Quack! There were bursts of shrill cries of crows. The crow flapped its wings and soon soared into the sky. The man in black narrowed his eyes, then without thinking any more, he suddenly turned around and walked out of the alley. But just as he turned his head, moment. Eyes met. I saw a young man holding an ice cream cone, standing at the entrance of the alley. He was really just a little bit away from having an extremely close and intimate contact with the other person. But after seeing the other person's face clearly, he was instantly shocked. Is it the low-level mage beside the Winter Spring Deacon? Could it be that I have been discovered? His heart instantly rose to his throat. Lin En looked at the nervous man in black in front of him, licked the cone as if no one was around, and said with bright eyes, "You're here to poop too, right?" Suddenly, the man in black choked. He didn't know how to respond to this question. Lin En patted the other person's shoulder with a smile, pointed to the alley, and said happily, "It's okay. There's plenty of space. How about pulling together? I have paper. I can give you half when I'm done." Chapter 24. Click. The man in black gritted his teeth, clenched his fists, and felt uncomfortable all over. "Give me half? I'll give you half. You're still going to give me some after you're done?" "I am so. No thanks. I'm not here to take a shit." He gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "I have something else to do, so I'm leaving first." He pulled his hood, lowered his head, and was about to leave Lin En with a flickering look in his eyes. "It seems like we just happened to meet." If he was really discovered by the Deacon of Winter Spring Valley, he would probably suffer a fatal blow immediately. But no matter what, you must be careful afterwards. His mental power spread out, wanting to carefully sense the location of the Winter Spring Valley Deacon. But in the next moment, his expression changed drastically. Because in his perception, the location of the city-breaking mage at this moment, just 1 meter in front of him. But there was clearly nothing in front of him. "Not good," he yelled. In an instant, he suddenly stretched out his hand from his black robe, took out a magic wand inlaid with a skull, and was about to cast a spell. But at that moment, just 1 meter in front of him, the air suddenly twisted and deformed. I saw a loli with twin ponytails and a great wizard hood slowly emerging from a transparent state. "It's already too late." Nanako smiled slyly. The magic that had been prepared long ago was instantly cast on the sturdy staff in her hand. Just when it's caught off guard, she pointed the end of her thick staff at the chest of the man in black. Buzz! A terrifying ripple instantly spread out from the end of the staff. The man in black's internal organs shook instantly, and he suddenly spat out a mouthful of pale green blood, and his body instantly flew towards the alley behind him. Lin En, holding an ice cream cone, dodged. The man in black flew out directly. As he flew out, he was shocked to see that the staff was touching his chest. At this moment, countless dense frosts were climbing out. Crash! The frost seemed to have life. It enveloped his entire body in an instant, freezing the magic circuits in his body and making him unable to cast spells. "No! No!" he screamed in horror. But soon, frost covered his entire body. When he hit the ground, his body had turned into an ice sculpture. Nanako pressed down the large hood on her head, revealing her sapphire eyes, and said, "Don't waste your magic power. This is a city-breaking seal. It can't be removed by a mere sorcerer like you." She snorted and walked towards the warlock triumphantly. When he walked to Lin En's side, he kicked Lin En's calf and said proudly, "Beautiful cooperation, you are worthy of being my Nanako's eldest disciple." Lin En. Originally, Lin En didn't want to come. With his personality, he would never care about such trivial matters. But who knew that the lowly master actually discovered this peeper, and Lin En was also very moved. Nanako walked up to the frozen sorcerer with a groan. Then Nanako took a glance and shouted majestically, "Disciple, guard the entrance of the alley and don't let anyone in. Master wants to interrogate him properly." Lin En was helpless. He shrugged and walked to the entrance of the alley with his ice cream cone. As soon as she reached the entrance of the alley, Lin En immediately heard all kinds of crackling sounds coming from behind her. "You dare to follow me? I am tired of living. I'm going to trample you to death. I'm going to trample you to death." Lin En glanced back slightly. Immediately, I saw the lowly master wearing a big wizard hat, raising her legs and stomping on the frozen warlock wildly. "Lin En. This tendency towards violence has become quite serious recently. How come such a gentle little girl suddenly became so violent? Could it be that someone has made the blue-haired girl unhappy? That shouldn't be the case. I haven't seen anyone say anything bad about the master." Finally, after a burst of crazy stomping, Nanako grabbed the sorcerer by the collar and scolded him with her blue eyes wide open, "Tell me. What on earth are you guys plotting? If you don't, I'll break your legs right now." The warlock remained silent. Nanako narrowed her eyes and said, "Are you so stubborn? I didn't expect that I would meet such a tough guy. It seems that I haven't beaten him enough, soon." Lin En heard the sound of pa 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 coming from behind him again. With a quick glance, I saw the violent little loli holding the thick and strong staff, hitting the opponent's head wildly. Lin En, master, there is something I don't know whether I should say or not. Snap. Nanako grabbed the sorcerer's collar again and snorted, "I'll give you one more chance, will you tell me or not?" The warlock shed silent tears. Lin En, master, I want to say. You still haven't said anything. Nanako was extremely angry. She had never seen someone with such a hard mouth. "It seems that you won't speak unless I torture you." Nanako cried out softly. A 360-degree shoulder throw. Then he jumped on the other person, gritted his teeth, and started stomping on him again. Snap, snap, snap. Finally. After stepping on it for more than 10 minutes. Lin En finally couldn't bear it anymore, and walked over and said, "Master. Stop hitting him. You're making him speechless." Nanako tilted her head and glared, "Why?" Lin En said with a pained face, "His mouth is frozen." In an instant, there was silence all around. One could vaguely see the frozen hot tears slowly overflowing from the warlock's frozen eye sockets on his frozen cheeks. Those tears were filled with grievance and humiliation, as if telling of the brevity of life and the anger of being beaten. This kind of humiliation is really not something that ordinary people can understand. I would like to say. You have to let me say. A few minutes later. Nanako's face was as red as an apple, but she still crossed her arms proudly and walked to the side with a hum. The euphemism is, giving the right of interrogation to the disciple. Finally, the ice in my mouth slowly melted. The man in black, with tears of humiliation in his eyes, said, You are going too far." Lin En held the ice cream cone and said with dead fish eyes, "Don't use the idiom created by the great and handsome Lord Violet casually. I ask you again, do you say it or not?" The man in black looked at Lin En angrily and said, "Want to get something out of me? Dream on. All of you will die." Lin En licked the cone and said, "So you won't talk about it?" The man in black sneered, "Oh, what can you do to me? I'm going to die anyway, do you think I'm afraid?" Lin En shook his head and said, "No, no, no, death is not scary." He smiled and said, "A life worse than death is what I fear the most, what do you think?" A drop of cold sweat slowly fell from the forehead of the man in black. I don't know why, but the second-level wizard in front of me had a peaceful smile and didn't seem to pose any threat at all. But when he looked at me again, I couldn't help but feel a chill down my spine. He gritted his teeth and said, "I want to see what you are capable of." But the moment he finished speaking, his eyes widened. The boy in front of him was holding half of the cone in his mouth. He freed one hand and then took out a mouse. Man in black, Omega Omega, mouse. Why would you carry this kind of thing with you? Chapter 25. Crunch, crunch. Lin En imitated a mouse and made an indistinct sound, his eyes full of smiles. Some small animals like warm environments the most. If they are put in through the collar and feel too cold, they will keep looking for warm places to crawl into. Under the trembling gaze of the man in black, Lin En unzipped his collar and dropped the squeaking mouse inside. Man in black. Lin En said nonchalantly, "Your neck is still frozen, so where do you think this mouse will go?" The man in black immediately trembled and said, "You don't think you can be scared like this?" But the next moment, the man in black disappeared. Lin En reached into his arms again and took out a colorful poisonous snake. Then came the centipedes, toads, slugs, slimes, hornets' nests. Then, under the shocked gaze of the man in black, all of it was stuffed into his collar. "Lin En, don't worry, I still have a lot of good things, I will definitely fill you up, just take your time to think about it." Man in black, Omega Omega, don't want. No. Who on earth is this guy? Why are there so many strange things in his arms? Then at that moment, his pupils suddenly shrank and he froze. He immediately felt. It seems like something is drilling into my body frantically. That is. Help, he screamed in horror. His whole body was stiff, his eyes were wide open, and cold sweat was pouring out of his body. Can't. Absolutely not. Resist it. You must resist it. Odo. But at this moment, Lin En patted his shoulder and said gently, "How's the preparation going?" And it was at this moment that he froze. Snap! It was as if at that moment, the city gate collapsed. That feeling is... I'll tell you. I'll tell you. The man in black burst into tears, his tears spilling into the sky. Finally he couldn't bear it anymore. That kind of humiliation. For a respectable magician, this is even more painful than killing him. Why? Why do such vicious people exist in this world? Lin En smiled slightly, licked the cone, and said, "That's good." Then he turned around and smiled at Nanako, who was not far away. "Master, it's all right now. No matter what you ask, he will probably be willing to answer." Nanako turned around hesitantly and walked over. Looking at the tearful and desperate man in black, he wondered, "What did you do to him?" Lin En shook his head and shrugged, "Nothing, just a very normal interrogation method. It's really nothing. Venomous snakes, mice, slimes, and slugs are all very cute and weak animals. I am still too kind, Nanako. Viper, rat. Get into the body." Nanako's eyes widened instantly and she subconsciously covered her skirt. She swallowed her saliva, looked at the man in black hesitantly, and said, "Does that hurt? The man in black was about to collapse, and screamed, "Why do you care if it hurts me? It's already so late. Ask me questions quickly. I beg you, I'm about to die. Ask me questions and let's finish the process quickly. I can't stand it anymore." Nanako shuddered, widened her eyes, hugged her thick magic wand, and asked immediately. The man in black answered almost every question and talked non-stop. He would even draw inferences from some of Nanako's vague questions and provide supplementary information in many aspects. The speed of his speech was so fast that one would even think he was in a hurry to reincarnate. Soon, Nanako learned their entire plan from him. "Open the space gate directly above Uairlan City." Nanako was shocked when she heard it. Summoning the Blood Domain Demon Lord of the Abyss, this. When Nanako heard this plan, even she felt a chill. Blood Realm Demon Lord. As one of the 7 knowledgeable deacons of Winter Spring Valley. Of course she had heard of this name. In the legend, there are 7 Abyss Lords in the Endless Abyss who rule the entire Abyss. Below the Lord of the Abyss, the strongest are the 72 Demon Lords. Among the 72 Demon Lords, the Blood Domain Demon Lord is a terrifying existence known for his cruelty and greed. Hundreds of years ago, there was once a group of devil believers who successfully summoned this tyrant into reality. Its appearance directly led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. In Violet history, that day was called the Bloody Night and will be remembered forever by history. And the scariest thing is, the demons that descend upon reality cannot be killed, they can only be exiled. But, damn it! Nanako's face turned a little pale. When she saw those knights appear today, she thought that there might be some monsters nearby, but she didn't take it seriously. After all, with the strength of those Sky Knights, no monster can be their match. But she really didn't expect. They actually summoned a Demon Lord level demon. "I've told you everything I know. Get those things out of my body right now." Press the black man to scream. Snap! Nanako gritted her teeth. He used his backhand to hit him on the head with a magic circle, knocking him unconscious. "Damn you! You summoned that kind of monster and still want me to help you. You are simply tired of living." Without further ado, Nanako grabbed his collar, turned her head quickly to look at Lin En, and said through gritted teeth, "Disciple, this is a serious matter. Master must quickly tell the Lord here about this news." "Disciple, you..." Lin En licked the cone and said firmly, "Master. Just go with peace of mind. Don't worry about me. I am too weak. Following you will only cause trouble for you. So I will stay here." Nanako. The conversation was blocked immediately. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.